We're live, okay. I'll just wait a second or two. There we are. Good evening. Welcome to Beaumont's regular council meeting for Beaumont City Council and City of Beaumont. Tuesday, May 27th here at 6 p.m. And it's game night in Oil Country, in case you haven't noticed. So we are wearing our Oilers apparel. And I see Jay's got his on there too, so that's awesome. Appreciate that. I know Phil's our Flames fan, but I do appreciate him donning the colors. Just being a team player. Just being a team player. I'm also a Leafs fan too. It's painful some years. So I feel your pain. All right, we are called to order. And for the first time, we'll begin, as we always do, with our land acknowledgement. The City of Beaumont respects histories, languages, and cultures of all First Peoples of this land, whether they be a First Nation, Métis, or Inuit descent, and appreciates that their presence continues to enrich vibrant communities across the land. As we gather here in Treaty 6 territory in the homeland of the Métis Nation, we acknowledge that we are all treaty people and have ongoing responsibilities to protect and honor the treaty, inherent rights of the people, and the land. With that, this evening we have two councillors who are away for work reasons, Councillors McCook and Councillors Monkoff-Swain, as well as Councillor Natellenbus. Nathan's joining us remotely from a location where he's doing his work today and couldn't get back in time to be in attendance. So Nathan, you're good? We did a sound check for you. You're good?
Yeah, we are good. Thank you.
Thank you. Myself to make sure I make clean on the conversation. I can't see you on the camera sometimes. So. Next order of business, we have no proclamation this evening. Item number 2, adoption of the agenda. Madam Clerk, any changes to the agenda this evening?
No, Mayor, we have no changes today.
Thank you. Please put a motion on the screen to adopt the agenda. Councillor Barnett, would you move that motion, please, to adopt the agenda?
Certainly, Mayor. I move that the May 27, 2025 council agenda be adopted as presented.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, would you please initiate the voting process? Councillor Natellenbus, how do you vote on the agenda?
In favor.
Thank you. That carries unanimously, 5-0. And I should mention, while I think of it, with 5 people in a council, majority of 3 will carry a bylaw instead of the usual 4 when we have 7. So 3 is a magic number for bylaw. Any kind of motion to be passed this evening. Next on our agenda, Madam Clerk, is open forum. Any open forum guests this evening?
We have one open forum registered for this evening, Supreet Sani.
Mr. Sani, are you here this evening? Are you Mr. Sani? No? Okay. I know you're not, Lauren. Seeing Mr. Sani has not appeared as we were anticipating, we will move on. Thank you, Madam Clerk. The next agenda is consent agenda. Madam Clerk, any change to the consent agenda? Could you please put it on the screen? Only one. Correct? Correct? Councillor Penrod, would you make the motion for the consent agenda when it appears? Oh, sorry, hang on. There you go.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that Council consent to approve the following agenda items without debate. Item 5.1, regular Council meeting minutes, May 13th, 2025. And item 12.1, public member appointment to Beaumont Municipal Policing Committee. Do you want me to read out the subheadings?
Not sorry, I don't think, Madam Clerk. Just the 2 items is sufficient, is it not? Madam Clerk?
That's sufficient, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion on the motion for the consent agenda. Seeing none, would you please initiate the voting process for Councillor Natellenbus, how do you vote on consent agenda?
In favor.
Thank you. That carries unanimously, 5-0 in favor of consent agenda. Next item on our agenda this evening is item 6.1, public hearings, bylaw 1080-25, development notifications, land use bylaw amendment. We'll have a public hearing, second and third reading this evening. Madam Clerk, would you please outline the public hearing procedure for this evening? Thank you. Which will apply to both 6.1, 6.2, and 6.3. Public hearing portion. Thank you.
Welcome to the May 27th, 2025 City of Beaumont Public Hearing, Development Notification Land Use Bylaw Amendment. So I'll just read the first notification for this bylaw, and then we'll do the other two bylaws afterwards.
Yep.
Public hearings are an opportunity to speak to council on advertised bylaws or certain resolutions. I'll spend a few moments providing an overview of the public hearing process. We have been accepting written submissions in the weeks preceding the public hearing, and the deadline for written submissions was noon on May 26, 2025. All written submissions received by the deadline have been provided to council in advance of this hearing for their review and are also available for public inspection on the agenda page of the city's website. Registration to present at the public hearing by electronic means was required by 4:00 p.m. on May 26, 2025. Registration to present in person is permitted in advance of the public hearing or at the public hearing. Currently, we have one registered speaker here for this public hearing, and we do not have anyone participating by electronic means. The procedure for public hearings is as follows. Administration will first make a presentation, and then council will be invited to ask questions of clarification. The applicant will then make a presentation and be available to answer questions from council. Next, members of the public will be invited to make their respective presentations. If anyone here has not yet registered to speak, please raise your hand and we will add you to the list of presenters. Please also fill out the sheet on the table with your contact information that will be kept on the record. Council will first hear from those who are in favor of the proposed bylaw, then those who are opposed, and then anyone else who wishes to be heard. Presenters will have up to 5 minutes to present, and then council will have the opportunity to ask questions of clarification. When it is your turn to make your presentation, please come up to the microphone and state your full name for the record before beginning your presentation. Your 5 minutes will start when your presentation starts. There will be a clock on the screen in front of you to track your 5-minute allotted time. Please remain at the microphone once you're done presenting, as council may ask you questions following your presentation. Once council has heard all the presentations, the public hearing will be closed and the regular session of council will reconvene so that council may decide on the bylaw. Finally, all of the city's public hearings are recorded as a webcast, which will be made available for viewing on the city's website. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So with that, we'll declare the public hearing open. And with that, we'll begin the administration's presentation. Actually, before I begin, I know, Mr. Graff, you're here to speak on bylaw 1080 in the public forum. When we get to that portion, sir, I'd recognize you. I don't recognize your name. Are you here to speak on the bylaw or just here to listen in?
Sort of listen in and ask a question about urban planning.
Urban planning. Okay. That would have been under open forum, sir. We kind of missed that opportunity. If you like, I can talk to you after the meeting is over and have our break. We can arrange to have a question from you direct to administration, or I can ask you a question one-on-one. We'll have a cup of coffee or something, okay? So I'll ask you to sit back and enjoy and listen, and it's going to be awesome. All right. With that, microphone, it's on. Please begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Mayor. So good evening, Mayor, and members of the public, and members of council. My name is Loretta Foley. I am a strategic advisor with the Planning and Development Department, and I'm here to present proposed changes to the planning and development notifications process. So this is a summary of my presentation. I'll be providing a brief background on notification needs, why we want to make these changes, review our limited jurisdictional review, talk about what the changes are, look at some examples of what that could look like, and then discuss risks and community insight. So to begin, my role within the Planning and Development Department is to implement a service review, which is looking at all aspects of how we manage development within the City of Beaumont. One area of improvement was identified on enhancing how residents are informed about development. So we want to ensure that residents know about proposed and approved changes, understand the implications of those changes, and know where to access updated information. And overall, the project goal is to empower residents to engage meaningfully in the development process. There were 6 prime areas of improvement that we wanted to address as a part of this project. One of them being subdivision notifications. These notifications can be confusing for residents. They often have land use related issues that they want to talk about at subdivision, but because they're further along the process in subdivision, it's hard for them to do that. And the public doesn't have standing in subdivision the way that they do in land use redistricting and plans. And again, that can be confusing for residents. So that was an area that we wanted to address. Another area is the limitations of notification boundaries. The notification that's required right now is typically by mail out, and that's a geographic area is chosen to send those letters out. If you're the house next to the border of where that geographic area was determined, you wouldn't get that mail out. You may still feel that you're impacted. So we wanted to address that issue. There's also differences in notification currently based on tenancy. So if you live next door to a proposed development change and you are a renter and not the owner of the property, you might not find out about it unless your landlord provided you the notification that we send out now. In the same way, neighborhood awareness is something that's difficult. If you didn't particularly receive a notice, you won't know about something that's going on in your neighborhood because you didn't get the letter. And the letters that go out now tend to use very formal technical language, which can be hard for the general public to understand. Most of you are not planners, unfortunately, and that means that the information that comes in can be difficult for a layperson to really understand, so that they can engage with it in a meaningful way. And the mailouts themselves are an administrative burden. It's something that staff have to spend time, making letters, stuffing envelopes, getting these things out, particularly in areas like mail strikes that we've had the last little while. It sometimes means we have to hand deliver or courier letters. This gets expensive and cumbersome. So we did do a limited jurisdictional review and found that over the past 5 years, many municipalities are improving their notifications. In general, the themes that we saw was a much higher reliance on the usage of signage and websites over traditional mailouts, that materials used are more visual, not as many words, more pictures, widespread reduction of technical language in favor of plain language. So that might mean a change from saying a medium-density residential or a medium-density dwelling might look like townhouses and apartments instead, things that are more comprehensible for the average person. And materials are prepared to encourage greater equity. So more modes, thinking about even things like color blindness in the packages and materials that go out to make sure that most people can get this package, understand what's going on, and be able to engage. So our proposed changes as a part of the notifications project generally is to update our templates to be more eye-catching, use plain language, and allow for adaptable use. So we can make one template and use it in multiple ways, whether that's a sign, to mail it out, put it on the newspaper, put it on our website. Reduce the use of some mailouts in favor of signage and website materials, which is why we require a land use bylaw amendment, so I'll get into that in a minute. And then introduce new signage for approved high-profile developments. Again, this isn't something that is being amended in the land use bylaw today. It would be convention as a part of the work that planning and development does when they're reviewing projects. So this is an example of what we're going from and what we're going to. So the left is an example of a mailed mail-out that we have been doing. And we're moving to the right, which, as you can see, we're using more color, more visuals, less wording, and that wording is more clear. I think most people would prefer the right to the left. So in terms of the bylaw that's before you today, we're really looking at two changes. So we want to amend, or we're seeking to amend Land Use Bylaw 5.19.3 to allow the notice for decisions on development permits for discretionary uses or variances to use site signage and the City of Beaumont website for adjacent landowner notification in place of mailouts. So it would be in place of mailouts for only these two kinds of applications. Second is to amend the Land Use Bylaw 5.3.4C to allow notification for subdivision to adhere to the regulations of the Municipal Government Act. So this change would allow for more flexibility. It would allow us to use mailouts, signs, and/or the newspaper for any required subdivision notifications. And it would also allow us to only require subdivision notifications for areas that don't have a plan in place that included a public hearing. So if the neighborhood is planned, there's a plan in place. That plan required public consultation. That means that people had the opportunity to talk about those land use issues that they might have at that time, and that a subdivision notification might not be something that's helpful for them. It doesn't mean that the subdivision authority can't send out a mail out for an area of particular interest. It just means they wouldn't have to in the same way anymore for those areas that have a plan in place where public notification was done or public engagement was done. So in terms of risks, we think that it's nominal overall financially. So there would be an administration reduction in staff administering a physical mail out. We do expect, though, that the increased use of signage is going to increase public awareness, which means that our planning staff will be spending more time engaging with the public, which is really where we want them to spend that time. So that balance of reduction and increase won't require additional staff resources. Community insight, the project overall is in direct response to community needs. The public is telling us that they want more opportunities to know what's going on and more visibility about what changes are being proposed in their neighborhoods. And so that's what we're seeking to achieve within this project. And there's a supportive communication strategy that's been developed to support the future implementation so that people know what they're seeing when they see these signs. That concludes my presentation. Thanks very much for your attention, and I'm available for any questions if you have them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Foley. Members of council, any questions for those in the you have the floor, followed by Councillor Penrod.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Foley. What the clarification I just want to make sure I understand is the switch from the paper ads. It's now not required, but it's allowed or it's optional, and that's only for subdivision, not for development permits or anything else.
So in answer to your question through the chair, the change that would come from the land use bylaw amendment would be that for development permits that are discretionary or variance, where we currently have to send a mail out, it's required that it comes in the form of a mail out. We could instead use a sign and the website. And then for subdivisions, the change is allowing the flexibility to use any of those means that were identified. So a mail out, a sign, the newspaper, a website ad, and that we wouldn't need to do it in as many cases as we currently do.
And just to follow up, Mayor, if I could, in the case of a discretionary use for development permit, I'm just wondering where home-based businesses fall. Are they automatically approved as long as they meet all the rules, or are they always discretionary, or what? Just clarify that for me, please.
Thank you for the question through the chair. A home-based business major is always discretionary, and they would
So they would fit
require
into
them.
this category of needing
Yes.
to be put on the website. And it says for adjacent landowner notification, but when it's on the website, that's not limited to who, that's everyone, right?
That's correct. And it's the same for the sign. Anyone going by that sees the sign and feels that they're affected can call in, they can provide information, and they have the opportunity to engage in that process. We're not necessarily going to be checking addresses and saying, well, if we had done 100 meters, you're in 105, we're not going to listen to you. We'd have that opportunity to engage with that person.
So an appeal could be made by someone who doesn't live in that area. And it's called an appeal, is it not, for a development permit in that case?
To answer your question, if the Subdivision and Development Appeal Board determined that they had standing in that process, then yes, they could appeal, so that they were affected.
But you will hear information about what the residents are saying about that particular, and it's just the major, it's not the minor home-based businesses.
Let me double check that for you. Thank you for your patience. Minors are typically permitted.
Typically permitted, okay. Appreciate that clarification, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Penrod, you have the floor.
Thanks, Mayor Daniluk. and
For
thank you.
clarifying questions before we go to debate.
Yeah. Thank you for the presentation. and for the opportunity previous in the process to kind of hear some of the intentions going on at Committee of the Whole that's brought us to this stage tonight. So one of the things I was excited about back then was this idea of having, as you mentioned tonight, additional signage placed or required for high profile or large projects. I think I heard you correctly tonight to say that that is not under the proposed bylaw amendment to be legislated, but rather it would be a convention that the department would adopt going forward. So can you just verify that I heard that correctly?
Through the chair, Councillor Penrod, that's correct. This land use bylaw amendment wouldn't compel us to use signage. Based on the way that the land use bylaw is identified now, we always could have used signage, but the intention behind the notification project generally is to use signage more.
Thank you. And my understanding additionally to that is that the convention going forward will be that even in some situations where community consultation or communication would not have been required, say an example where there's not a variance being issued or a discretionary use being allowed, that the department could, under this convention, ask for signage to be placed because the development is being deemed to be high profile or a large project. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. And so it seems like you're trying to thread a needle here. I notice on page 3 of your report, you say, on the one hand, you're trying to avoid confusing feedback requests for the public. Could you just speak a bit more to the meaning of that? I think you had a chance in previous meetings to provide some clarity and color on that, but if you could just restate that for me, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. Again, through the chair, the intention is to really ensure that people have a good understanding of where they can be best heard as it relates to land use specific decisions like should the development near me be mostly residential or mostly commercial, as an example. That's really dealt with at the plan process and at redistricting. So we want people to come out and provide their, be engaged, provide their comments at plan amendment stages and redistricting for land use decisions. But what we found is that when people are getting things like subdivision, they're having those land use concerns and they're bringing them there, but that decision already got made at the redistricting and the plan amendment stage. So they're confused and then frustrated when they feel like what they've shared wasn't heard. But when it's coming is further down in the process. So we want to bring people back into the areas where their voices can have the most impact and make sure that they're aware of when that is happening.
Thank you. So it sounds to me like what we're trying to avoid is giving people the impression, maybe unintentionally, that if they raise a concern, there's something that could be done about that concern at this stage, especially in a case where legally that's not possible. Is that's correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. And so on the other hand, I just did want to highlight that in your report, you do state that residents have repeatedly requested more awareness of applications and opportunities to provide feedback. So can you speak to, is there a communications plan to, or a broader effort or option to continue to do kind of public engagement and education on how these layers of legislation, layers of processes work and unfold for people? Like we have cases where the plan, as you've mentioned, has been put into place in 2017. So the folks that had the opportunity to attend a meeting and give feedback at that point, almost coming on 10 years ago, or maybe not close to the same people who are living in the area today or looking at living in the area.
Through the chair to Councillor Penrod, certainly the Planning and Development Department is always looking at ways to ensure that the public is appropriately engaged. And even as recently as the last couple of weeks, we've been having discussions internally about how best to do that. In terms of specific initiatives, I can't think of anything that's on the docket in terms of an actual project, but I could defer to Ms. Raymond to speak to that if she'd like to.
Ms. Raymond?
I'm guessing no from the look on her face.
Pointing at the question.
Ms. Raymond?
Can you repeat the question, please?
You know what, I don't think I need to. I think the response I got is clarifying enough. I think there may be a motion coming later in the meeting tonight that kind of refers to some of this and speaks to some of the tensions in the community, but also that value in our administration of continuous improvement and that desire to improve our processes wherever we can, having heard clearly feedback from the community. So thank you for answering my questions.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Talabas, do you have any questions before I go to Councillor Newkirk?
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor. Yes, just a couple clarifying questions.
Okay, please proceed.
Thank you. I guess for administration or planning here, are you guys able to provide a little detail on what would be considered a high-profile development?
Through the chair, thank you, Councillor Natellenbos, for the question. So a high-profile development would be a development where we're seeing a significant change to the existing character. So if we have a primarily low-density residential neighborhood that's getting a higher density use, a big mixed-use project as an example, that's something that we would anticipate to garner a lot of attention and would encourage the use of a sign in that case based on this project.
Perfect, thank you. And that would be referring to a permitted use?
Correct.
Okay. And then just another question, actually, Councillor Penn. In the report, it noted that mail-outs are labor-intensive. Would we see some significant time savings and potentially opportunity to use resources elsewhere if we, I guess, convert to signage as opposed to mail-outs? Are we going to see a significant amount of administration time come back?
Through the chair, in answer to your question, I'm expecting a balance, that we will have a reduction in staff time in putting together mailouts, but that's going to be balanced by more engagement, which is going to mean that same staff member is going to spend more time interacting with the public. So we're expecting it to be neutral.
Perfect. And then just one last question in terms of the simplification of notifications. I just want to confirm, obviously, we want to reduce some of the technical language, but there will still be enough content that it's not too simplified, correct? That we're still explaining all the changes that may be happening or the variances that have been requested. It's not going to limit the content of information. It's just going to change how it's delivered. Am I correct in saying that?
Through the chair, yes, you're correct. The intention is that the language we use will be geared at a level that makes the intention of the application comprehensible, not to diminish people's opportunity to get those details. It'll also have contact information, so if a particular person wanted more specific details, they'd have a way to contact staff to get that information if they needed it.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate the answers.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Van Newkirk. Stephen, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. And this is kind of subsequent to Councillor Natellenbos's last question. Just a little bit more specific about the idea and a great addition. What QR code is going to land the user? Can you maybe elaborate on that?
Through the chair to Councillor Van Newkirk, great question. So the intention of the QR code is that it would take someone to our development applications page that identifies all of our current applications now. So it lists development permits and other projects that are currently out for consultation. So it would be a static QR code. There wouldn't be a specific page for every specific DP application, but it would point them to that general page that has everything that's going on right now.
Yeah, so the intent would be kind of a landing site to more information, but it wouldn't preclude the opportunity on maybe a bigger or higher profile site to link right to a document or right to a specific page, right? Like, you'll be able to tailor that, I would assume?
Through the chair, yes, if there was need to have a specific page for a specific project, we would just generate a new QR code for that particular application, and we would use that for the sign for that case.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. See no further questions for clarifying questions for administration. Thank you for the presentation, Ms. Foley. Stick around, we have questions during second and third reading possibly. So with that, continuing on with the public hearing. Anybody interested in speaking for the bylaw? Mr. DeGraff, now's your chance. If you're interested in speaking for the bylaw. 5 seconds, 4, 3. All right. Welcome back to council, Mr. DeGroot. Mr. DeGraff, pardon me, I apologize. You have 5 minutes to speak in favor of the bylaw 1080-25. Begin when you're ready, sir.
Okay. Thank you again to Mayor and Council for giving me the opportunity to speak. Originally, I was going to come forward here to speak in opposition to this bylaw. I'll give you my reasons in a minute here. However, I do want to commend administration for bringing this and having all the work they've put in and others with getting this amendment over the last year to the point it is today. You guys have already started pointing out my concern that I have with this plan, and that's just with regards to the specifics that it doesn't require the signage the way that it's written to be able to, if there is no variance granted or discretionary uses not required, that no sign would be required. However, upon the presentation, hearing that the high impact would be kind of a convention put forth, I agree with that aspect. That sort of made me change my mind for approving in favor. Like I said, my concern is just that it doesn't go far enough on that front with regards to giving a specific issue with regards to making sure that that option is not overlooked. As we know in the Dansville community, it's created a lot of contention, and something like this still might have had the opportunity to still go through the approval process, not be seen till the end, rushing people to be able to approve it, or not approve it, but in order to appeal the decision. It just limits the time frame on that. However, as a whole, I know that the Land Development Authority cannot realistically provide advance notice for most developments. It's just that question of whether or not you put a convention in place in the future with regards to density or high profile may require opening a public hearing. I don't know if that's even possible within land use bylaw opportunities in terms of amendments, or if it's just a matter of an after the fact, and if it is contentious, do you extend the appeal process to provide sufficient time for residents to engage appropriately. That's just pretty much my point of notes that I wanted to bring forward. Like I said, speaking in favor of this as written, I believe it's gone a long way in terms of providing transparency, whether it be small business owners that are going in the community and increased traffic issues that might be of concern, or with regards to developments of additional ADUs that might be outside of the norm. So I speak, I'm done.
Thank you, Mr. Graff. Appreciate the presentation. Any questions from members of council for our presenter from the public? Seeing none. Nathan, I can't see you on screen. Do you have any questions?
I do not. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Thanks for your presentation.
Thank you.
Have any questions on a follow-up? You may have a cup of coffee and have a follow-up discussion. A couple of your questions you raised there are kind of what if down the road sort of thing? Okay, you're welcome. Excuse me, sir, I'm not sure, I want to make sure you have a chance to speak. The only chance in the public hearing on this bylaw is right now. Do you have a concern regarding this bylaw or a general question we can ask? You can ask me maybe later.
And a question I want to ask you later, all council and planning people.
Okay. I'll come see you at our break and we'll figure out how best to help you, okay? But I'll make sure in case you want to talk about this bylaw, there's only one chance to do it and that's now. So you're good? Thank you. Seeing no further people willing to speak in favor of the bylaw, anybody in the public here willing to speak or wishing to speak against the bylaw? Seeing none, anybody else in members of the public wishing to be heard in general on the bylaw? Seeing none? Madam Clerk, I believe that concludes our public hearing on this bylaw, 1080-25. So with that, the public hearing is closed on this bylaw. Would you please put the second reading motion on the screen? I'll make it to have council then 80-25 Development Notifications Land Use Bylaw Amendment be given second reading. With that, I'll open to members of council for questions or debate on second reading. Councilor Tellenbus, do you have any questions or comments on second reading?
I do not. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Penrod, you have the floor.
Thanks, Mayor Daniluk. Councillor Van Newkirk's question, line of questioning around the QR codes just reminded me of another clarifying question I wanted to ask. One of the, I think, most exciting features of our new website is the ability to translate into multiple languages. So just wanted to ask the templates that you've talked about, are these kind of in a PDF format or are these in a format that will be able to take full advantage of that functionality of our website to be able to translate into a variety of languages?
Let me get your microphone. Ms. Foley, it's on now.
Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Penrod, typically when we upload information on the website, it's done within the website itself, so we wouldn't be just identifying the PDF. Obviously, the signage itself is going to be static, but on the website, it's text within our website, so they would be allowed to do that, or able to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions in terms of council on second reading? Seeing none, would you please activate the voting for second reading, please? Councillor Tellenbus, how do you vote?
In favor.
Thank you, Councillor. That carries unanimously, 5-0 in favor of second reading. Thank you, Council. Madam Clerk, would you please put motion for third reading on the screen, please? Member of Council.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that bylaw 1080-25 Development Notifications Land Use Bylaw Amendment be given third reading.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion on third reading? Councilman Newkirk, pardon me. You have the floor, Stephen.
Yeah, just kind of a concluding statement on this is that an opportunity and a shift change or a step change in how administration is going to be able to communicate changes to development in the community, and this should be and will be welcomed by the community. So just thanks to everyone involved in doing this, and thanks to council for getting it this far.
Thank you, Councillor. You read my mind on that process too, because this entire process began a number of months ago. It wasn't the last 30 days. This entire process of revamping how we communicate on critical land issues began a number of months ago, and this culminates into today and third reading. So thank the administration and public for the feedback that helped us get this process going. It was from the public that expressed concerns of needing some change, and we listened as best we could. Administration helped us get to today. So thank you very much. So seeing no further discussion on third reading.
Just quickly, Mayor, if I may.
Nathan, go ahead. Sorry, I missed your hand. I apologize. Nathan, you have the floor.
Thank you. No, I just wanted to, I guess, second or third or echo those comments. It's obviously a push towards it. Where identified that report, especially tenants, was a big one. I've received complaints from tenants who weren't aware because, again, the landlord received the notification. So having a more public display of what's going on in the community will definitely help. So appreciate the effort that's been put forward.
Thanks, Nathan. Sorry I missed your hand up there. With that, thank you, Ms. Foley, as well. With that, in the voting process, Councilor Telebas, how do you vote?
In favor.
Thank you, Council. That carries unanimously, 5-0 in favor of third reading. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Administration. Moving on to our next item is item 6.2 and 6.3, bylaw 1074-25 and 1075-25. We will do the public hearing for both bylaws together. Madam Clerk, does no need to repeat the instruction on public bylaws, is my understanding. Would you concur?
That's correct, Mayor. Although I did see someone new in attendance, so it might be prudent to go through the process.
You're good?
Oh,
Sorry?
sorry, I was just informed she's not here for this item. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Because you only had one chance to say yes, and that was it. So, there you go. Appreciate that, thank you. All right, I will declare the public hearing open for bylaws both 1074-25 and 1075-25. I believe Mr. Groton, will you be presenting administration on both bylaws or just the one? On both? Your microphone is on, sir. Please begin when you're ready.
So thank you and good evening. I'm Matthew Grattan with Long Range Planning. I'm here with Joanna Swong, Manager of Long Range Planning as well. So as the Mayor mentioned, I'm speaking to two bylaws, 1074-25 and 1075-25. Both of these bylaws were given first reading by Council on May 6th of this year. These bylaws are intended to be dealt with together and are associated with an application submitted by InvizTech Consulting on behalf of Dream Corporation. So bylaw 1075-25 proposes a text amendment to the Elan Area Structure Plan, or ASP, to enable changes to definitions and policies for row housing at the neighborhood structure plan level. And then subsequently, bylaw 1075-25 proposes an amendment to the Elan Neighborhood Structure Plan, or NSP, that details how row housing will be permitted and regulated within the low-density policy area of this plan. So for those who are unfamiliar, Elan Neighborhood Structure Plan is located north of Township Road 505, or 50th Ave, and west of Range Road 243. And then the Elan Area Structure Plan applies to all lands within the City of Beaumont located between Range Road 243 and 244, and then between Township Road 510 in the north to Highway 625 in the south. So on the Area Structure Plan amendment, an amendment to the Elan ASP is required to enable the subsequent Neighborhood Structure Plan amendment. And then the purpose of the amendment is to broaden the definition of low-density residential to include some row housing if permitted at the NSP level. And moving on to the Neighborhood Structure Plan amendment. So this proposes to broaden the definition of low-density residential, or LDR, to include some row housing. Currently, the definition in the Elan NSP includes only single detached and semi-detached housing, whereas the proposed policies would permit row housing within the LDR area at the discretion of the subdivision authority. The amended NSP also limits the maximum allowable amount of row housing in this LDR area to 15%. And this will be demonstrated by the applicant at the subdivision application stage through the submission of shadow plans, which, among other things, shows the cumulative area designated for row housing throughout the plan area. Proposed policies also direct the subdivision or development authority to consider municipal servicing, fire flows, traffic generation when reviewing applications. The subdivision authority can request this information for any application, but the amended NSP provides additional policy direction to support consideration of these topics. Then the bylaw amendment also adds the limitation that only street-oriented row housing, this is where an alley or a lane is present, is permitted in these LDR areas. So this ensures that no front attached garage row housing is allowed here, and therefore on-street parking will be provided. Lastly, there are some administrative amendments to revise the roadway classification of a portion of 50th Avenue, or Township Road 505, from collector to arterial. And this is to bring the two plans into alignment with higher order plans and other bylaws, like the city's municipal development plan or the transportation master plan. So in terms of the overall impact, planning and development estimates the following potential impacts to overall neighborhood dwelling unit and population numbers. So the number of additional dwelling units in the low-density residential area could range from about 37 to 73 additional units if developed to the permitted maximum 15%. Using the average of this range of 55 additional units, this was used to update the neighborhood land use and population statistics. Overall, this would increase neighborhood population potentially up to an increase of 150 people or 4.1%. Overall residential density in the Ilan NSP increases from 43 dwelling units per hectare to 45 dwelling units per hectare. In our review of these applications, administration did not require any technical studies for this application, such as servicing reports and transportation impact assessments, as these can be requested on a case-by-case basis at the time of subdivision. Public engagement. So public engagement involved mailed notice to affected and adjacent owners, the landowners, emailed notice to external agencies and internal departments at the city, public notice on the city's website, and this was done back in November of 2024. So in this case, two responses were received, one indicating no concerns and one noting a change of address. Public hearing notices were also mailed out to affected and adjacent landowners, advertised in the newspaper, and posted on the city's website. So as for the recommendation, administration supports the amendments as they do provide flexibility to allow for a range of housing options without the need to amend the NSP land use concept each time new or rearranged row housing is added or readjusted. It does cap the amount of row housing in the low-density residential area to ensure single and semi-detached is still the primary form of housing. It aligns with MDP, or Municipal Development Plan, policies to integrate a broad spectrum of housing types to accommodate low, medium, and higher densities in the neighborhoods. And low-density developments are intended in the MDP to accommodate primarily single-detached and semi-detached dwellings within residential neighborhoods. Finally, it aligns with other ASP policies to provide a variety of housing choices to meet the needs of a diverse population, to provide opportunities for a range of residential densities, innovative housing types, and alternative site and building designs that will contribute to the overall diversity and sustainability of the residential land use pattern and form. And to close, should council choose to give second and third reading to these bylaws, bylaw 1074-25 for the ASP amendment should be read first, followed by bylaw 1075-25 for the NSP amendment. So that concludes my presentation, and we're happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Mr. Groton. Appreciate that. Any questions, and any clarifying questions from members of council for administration on the presentation on the two bylaws?
Mayor, if I may.
Do you have any questions?
Yes, thank
Please
you. Just
proceed.
a quick question. If this isn't approved, if any attempts for row houses are made, we'll have to proceed through a request for going through the NSP process. Are you able to guide us through what that would look like for each request and a rough timeline if this wasn't approved?
Thank you. Through the mayor. Typically, amendments take between 3 and 6 months to get through council. That's just because of the analysis that administration has to do. We do circulate the plans to other agencies and departments. And then we do have to advertise public hearings, and that just does take time. So that's typically what the process is for a plan amendment.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
No further, nothing, Nathan? No further, Nathan?
Not at this point, no.
Thank you. Councillor Barnhart, you have the floor for clarifying questions.
Thank you, Mayor. I did get a bit confused about why we're changing the definition of low density. Could you just help me again to understand why we're moving from medium to low? So when I think about, I know it's not, I understand further than where I thought we needed to go, and I'm just not understanding what the real reason is why we're changing the definition rather than proceeding some other way. I'm sure there's a technical reason, but I don't understand it.
So thank you for that question through the mayor. So the purpose of this application is to give more flexibility to the subdivision authority within reason to be able to approve applications for land development through subdivision without having to come back to council every time a change is made to the land use concept of the plan. So it is meant to save a bit of administrative time, some of council's time, and also the applicant's time, just by providing that slight bit of flexibility within the definitions.
Why can't that happen with the definition of medium? That's the part I'm missing. Like, couldn't we have done some other change so that it would stay in medium, but it would be, the administrative process would stay the same? I think I'm missing a little piece here, but I don't know what it is. That's why I'm asking the question.
So I suppose we could have broadened the definition of medium density housing to include low, sort of single and semi. Is that the intent of the question?
Well, because right now there is a type of row housing that is under medium,
That's correct.
which I think that's part of what I'm not really clear on. When you say street-oriented, what I'm kind of familiar with is over by Dansero. Is that street-oriented, or is that the one you're talking about?
So our definition of street-oriented row housing would be row housing that faces a public roadway, and in this case would have a lane for
behind.
rear access as well.
Right. So medium density is comprised of row housing stacked and street-oriented and low-rise apartment. So it seems that we have row housing in both. If this passes, it'll be in both. Is that correct?
This is correct. So row housing is permitted in the medium density areas. So that is just pointing to page 159 of 306 in the package. So medium density is the brown color. So row housing is permitted in that area. This would provide an additional opportunity to develop up to 15% in the low density, and that's the yellow policy area.
In the medium density, then, we don't have the opportunity to limit it as much? Is the low density where there's still an opportunity to put conditions on that in terms of the amount, the quantity, that?
Right, there's nothing limiting the amount in the medium density so far.
Either.
Or as part of this application.
I'm going to have to go back to school to learn all the planning lingo, because something's missing there for me. But I'll wait and hear what my colleagues have to say.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further question of clarification for administration at this point? Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Groton, for the presentation. Next, we'll hear from the applicant, I believe is present today to speak in the public hearing on these two bylaws. Would you please join us at the table, sir? And when you sit down, please state your name, company you represent, and begin your presentation. You have 5 minutes, please. Oh, actually, you have 10 minutes. My apologies. 5, 10, 10 tops.
Okay, good evening, members of council. I feel surprisingly underdressed at council for a change. I thought about wearing my jersey, but I did not, unfortunately. My name is Stephen Yu. I am a planner with Invistech Consulting, and I'm here representing Dream Development on the proposed amendments to the Elan Area Structure Plan and the Elan Neighborhood Structure Plan. The amendment proposed today is the result of the evolution of the city's planning document prior to the city's current land use bylaw. As a result, these plans do not contemplate row housing within the low-density areas, which is typically seen along collector roadways in new communities. The intent of this amendment is to incorporate row housing in low-density areas to provide flexibility to offer more variety of housing options within the Elan neighborhood, save time, introduce more opportunities for row housing generally, as well as providing improved housing affordability. Of course, doing all this while ensuring it is integrated into the neighborhood sensitively with the existing residents. So how will row housing be sensitively integrated? Not every neighborhood will be allowed to incorporate row housing in low density areas via this amendment. It will only be allowed if it's written into the neighborhood structure plan. So for this amendment, it would be applicable to the Elan 1 neighborhood structure plan, which is the one that's being developed by Dream, but not the Elan 2 neighborhood structure plan unless there's an amendment that comes forward for that. The form is also limited to street-oriented row housing, so this means, as Mr. Randham just mentioned, row housing that's accessed via the lane. The quantity is also restricted to 15% of all low-density areas, so that there's no opportunity to construct all of the low-density areas as row housing itself. Finally, the placement of row housing in low-density areas is at the discretion of the subdivision and development authority. In reviewing the remaining lands in the Elan 1 neighborhood, the amount of row housing that could be developed is approximately 11.2% of the low-density areas that's remaining. This is a conservative number, as not the intent to develop the remaining as all those areas that are possible for row housing as row housing. The Elan 1 neighborhood is currently in its first stage of development. To date, the neighborhood is predominantly single detached homes in a variety of forms. Row housing accounts for approximately 10.9%, but that includes both some of the areas that are identified as medium density residential, and some of the proposed that's in stage 4 that is subject to this approval today. To understand the impact of incorporating more row housing, we've reviewed how many lots you could accommodate in a comparable block to block between row housing and zero lot lines, as it would be the most comparable. Assuming similar house sizes, the row housing block accommodates approximately 2 additional homes compared to a zero lot line block. Mitigating the impacts of new row housing developments was also an important factor in this amendment. As previously mentioned, we've incorporated a variety of regulations to limit the number, the location, and the form of row housing, as well as putting it into the discretion of the subdivision and development authority. Further, as Elan is a new neighborhood, new row housing development would only occur in the new phases. It would not be used to infill in the newly built houses that just got built. That would not be feasible at all. For Elan 1, it would also be intended to be identified on Dream's marketing plans, making a clear expectation for future buyers and current residents where these types of developments will be located. This map shows the potential development for the Elan 1 neighborhood, with Phase 4 identified there in red. At Phase 4, and everything south of it has been approved or is in the process of being built or has already been constructed, except for the exception of those 2 red stars within the Phase 4 boundary. Everything west of Stage 4 has not been developed yet. So we've identified 3 blocks with the black stars. Those are areas that have lane access, but we are not contemplating to have row housing, where the blue stars are areas that could have it, but it's also not the intent to develop all 5 of those blocks with row housing. So as you can see, Beaumont really enjoys single detached dwellings for the majority of this, and it's the intent that we would continue that within the rest of this neighborhood. And as shown in that previous map, we have about 4 potential areas for row housing to be incorporated within the neighborhood. As part of this amendment, the land statistics have been updated to reflect this, as Mr. Grant had just mentioned. We're estimating approximately 30 additional dwellings if we were to develop row housing versus zero lot lines in those areas. This would see an increase of approximately 1 dwelling unit per net residential hectare, that 43 to 45 that was mentioned previously. It is also important to note, though, that the Lawn 1 neighborhood does include the urban village, which does inflate the density of the neighborhood up a bit due to that higher density. As a result, if we exclude the urban village, we're kind of looking at about 30 units per hectare, which is about typical to most new greenfield developments in Beaumont and other municipalities. So in summary, while single detached dwellings will remain the predominant form of housing in a lawn, the intent of this amendment is to provide more flexibility and housing diversity through the neighborhood. The amendment incorporates restrictions on the location, the form, the amount of row housing, as well as putting the discretion at the subdivision and development authority to mitigate impacts on adjacent and existing residents. This is supplemented that this amendment is intended to apply to future stages of development only. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and thank you so much for listening to my presentation.
Hey, Mr. Yu, appreciate that. Any members of council with questions for Mr. Yu on his presentation this evening on behalf of the applicant? Councilor Talabas, do you have any questions? I can't see you on my screen.
Perfect, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Just a few quick questions. One, I guess, starting with the intent is the comment that the intent is to incorporate into future phases. Am I correct in saying that although that may be the intent, it wouldn't necessarily restrict it to future phases? It could be current phases. Let's say a house or a couple of houses were to be damaged, or there were to be a significant fire or something. In that area, we could potentially have additional row housing based on what we're putting forward or requesting?
Through the chair to Councilor Telebos, there is that opportunity. However, as mentioned, all the existing stages that are developed or proposed have existing and approved subdivision applications that do not contemplate row housing in the low density areas.
Perfect, thank you. I also did hear a few buzzwords that we're going to be hearing over everyone's election campaign here. One being diversity of housing and one being affordability, but I didn't see any numbers behind any of those comments. Can you tell me what true, like in a statistical sense, what we're going to look like in terms of affordability and reduction in prices in housing if we go this route?
Through the chair to Councilor Telebos, unfortunately, the developer from Dream is unable to be here. They had some childcare issues, but from the numbers I have, they're expecting that row housing would be kind of below the 350 price point, where a single detached would be above that price point. So that's where they're seeing that opportunity for that lower house price point.
Okay, so what's the comparison here? I know you said below 350. Are we talking the others at 350 or just above? It's very hard for me to make a decision without those numbers to know what we're pushing for affordability.
Through the chair, through Councilor Telebos, I don't have those specific numbers, but I have that for the product type of row housing where it's all typically below a 350 price point.
Okay, perfect. Just a question, I guess, from your standpoint, again, we noted things like diversity and affordability. What potential adverse impacts could we see from something like this?
Through the chair to Councilor Telebos, based off what we are looking at, as we've shown in that one comparison, if we develop one block as a zero lot line of comparable housing dwelling types in terms of housing sizes, and compared that to row housing, the net difference was approximately 2 units. So on a typical block, if it's a 2-unit increase, then we're seeing maybe 2 more families moving in. So from the overall servicing, transportation, traffic, we weren't seeing that great of an overall impact in the overall neighborhood. Also because through other developments within other neighborhoods, such as medium density, those apartment sites, they might not develop to the full potential that they have, providing that, so if the lower density areas will help offset the trade-off of the servicing capacity that's available. Further, with any subdivision application, they have to go through, we would have to complete any technical reports and studies to show that the impacts of going through a row housing versus single detached or duplexes is being able to be met by the existing servicing capacity in the roadway network. Otherwise, if the city is not comfortable with that, they would not approve that subdivision application.
Perfect. So I guess just looking for a little more clarity, and this may slightly fall on administration, but if what you're saying is correct, then it becomes a discretionary approval. It's not permitted use based on the traffic assessment impact?
Through the chair to Councilor Talonboss, that's correct. If administration is not comfortable with what we are proposing, that we can make sure that traffic is being handled. If there's not enough servicing capacity, they would not approve that subdivision application.
Okay, perfect. And could I get clarity, I guess, from administration? I know we're asking applicant the question, but it ties directly to what was stated there. I just know that wasn't the case for previous developments. Because it was a permitted use, we could not, regardless of a traffic assessment, make adjustments to what had been proposed. Am I correct in saying that, or could I get some clarity?
Mr. Groton?
Thank you. So the direction in the policy would be to give the subdivision authority the discretion to review and approve these. If they feel that the row housing is not compatible, if there's too much traffic generation, if servicing is inadequate, they could deny the application or request changes if those have not been addressed suitably.
Ms. Raymond, do you wish to add an additional comment, Ms. Raymond?
Yes, thank you. Through the mayor to Councillor Natellenboss. Mr. Groton has said is correct. Subdivision comes before the permitting stage on the land use bylaw, where we're looking at permitted and discretionary uses. So this is the stage before we've created the lots, and we're actually subdividing that bare land to create those individual titles.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Newkirk. Stephen, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. Just wanted to go back to the changes in density slide that you had there. Hammer home the conversation around, the exponential density is still set at 30 units per net residential hectare. And, the 40 to 43 to 44 ratchets up when you bolt in, the urban village node, right? Can you just speak to that a little bit? Because what that says is pretty node is at 30, and then you bolt in the node, which is going to have more people in it, takes the stats and increases them. Am I interpreting that correct?
Through the chair, Councillor Van Nieuwkerk, that's correct. So if we looked at the land statistics inside both either the Elan Area Structure Plan or the Elan Neighborhood Structure Plan, you would see that the urban village residential, that is projected at 100 units per hectare, whereas low density and medium density are done at 25 and 75 respectively. So they are done at because it is a smaller, lower form of residential development, where the urban village residential tend to be more of that mixed use, that apartment style kind of development, so it is a higher intensity of use.
Yeah, so the really dense piece associated with the urban village will be confined, and the rest of everything around it is going to be relaxed. Like that's the spirit of what's in front of us here, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Penrod. Phil, you have the floor.
Thanks, Mayor Dunluck. Appreciate the presentation tonight, Mr. Yu. I'm looking at your slide for impact on existing residents. One of the bullet points there speaks to identification on marketing plans where row housing would be located. If you could just illuminate that for us a little bit, what would the proponents' plans be to do that? One thing we hear again and again as a concern is people moving into a neighborhood, making an investment decision in a neighborhood, and then from their perspective, what they've invested kind of in what they've invested in changes around them. So what would the proponent be proposing to do just to help people make the best investment decision they can?
Absolutely, through the chair, Councillor Penrod. So the Elan neighborhood does have a marketing website currently. I believe it's like, I don't know the exact URL for it, but they have a marketing website that they use to promote like the Elan community that shows which lots have been sold, which lots are currently impending, which ones are available for sale. So on that plan, as each stage comes forward, they will release the whole area showing what is being proposed for the next area, including what kind of housing type it is, as future prospective buyers want to know what is available, what is, like you're saying, their neighbors are going to be. So with each, as we receive a subdivision application approval by the city, that can be uploaded onto this website to show what it is, because until it's approved, we can't sell imaginary lots.
Thank you. I appreciate that clarity. And if you can just confirm for me,
With the chair, Councillor Penrod, the amendment would be at an NSP level specific basis. So right now we are proposing this amendment to Lawn 1 neighborhood. That is correct. If a future neighborhood would like to come, that's another decision for council to make if this gets approved today.
yeah, thank you. So I should have been clearer. We will potentially be making decision on the ASP piece, and that will apply to the whole area, but then the subsequent decision on the NSP would apply only to Elan 1.
Through the chair, Councilor Penrod, that's correct. The ASP amendment that's being proposed today identifies that the neighborhood plan has to support townhouses in low-density areas.
Yeah, thank you. And so just a further question to administration, just to confirm that if that was to come forward in another area, another neighborhood structure plan within Elan 2 or whatever, that would be at the discretion of the subdivision authority, or would that come to council and a public hearing?
Mr. Groton?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we are including the amendment to the area structure plan as it's the higher order plan. So we need that to enable further regulation down at the neighborhood structure plan level. If a new neighborhood were to come online, Elan 3 perhaps, it would have to come before council with proposed policies and land use maps as well, and would get a public hearing as well. So it would come back to council first.
Thank you. And further to that and before that, it would also trigger, because these are discretionary proposals, it would trigger the signs that we were talking about earlier and opportunities for neighbors to engage and bring their input. Is that correct?
Yes, for something like a new neighborhood structure plan, we would probably want to engage widely. So we would follow whatever land use bylaw amendments, policies and practices are chosen tonight and by administration. So we typically would do website ads, newspaper ads, maybe not mail-outs on potentially just to neighborhood residents or landowners, and then potentially signs if we want to go that route as well. So we do have all those opportunities.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate you answering my questions.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no further questions for our presenter. Thank you very much, Mr. Yu, for presenting this evening. Appreciate that. Continue on with our public hearing on these two bylaws as one public hearing for both. I'll entertain any members of the public wanting to speak in favor of the bylaw at this time. Seeing none, members of the public in attendance who speak against the bylaw. Again, seeing none. Anybody else in the public willing to deem themselves to be affected by the bylaw who wish to speak? Seeing none. Oh, Councillor Penrod, you're not member of the public.
Yeah, sorry, Mayor. I just wanted to know if we could maybe just double check with our resident here too and make sure that this wasn't the piece of the meeting that he was wanting to ask a question about. We haven't had that opportunity to have our break yet, and a couple weeks ago we had a situation where we got to the end of the meeting and wished we had asked somebody sooner, so just wanted to raise that.
Okay, I thought I was clear in my previous questions. Well, one more time, sir. You're good on the bylaw?
What I want to discuss with the city is, for the area structure plans for that area for around Walmart and everything. So I have a little bit of background with regards to what the design of the whole area was going to be. And I've seen a few things occur in the last year or so.
Yeah. Can you join us at the microphone so we can hear you better, sir?
Nathan can't hear.
Yeah.
Just kind of have issues.
Do you need some assistance?
Get there, you want to get that.
Yeah, it's a wireless mic.
Okay, so can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Anyways, I was saying, my background is I lived in Leduc County for about 15 years. 3 years ago, I moved into town, but my hobby, I guess you could say, over the years has been urban planning. I was involved in Leduc County following their area structure plans for their expansion of their city there, and Beaumont's expansion in that direction. And I kind of thought I understood how area structure plans were sort of like the big design, and that you could go to a map somewhere in the city and see how all these tie together, right? And I haven't been able to find that map where I could walk in and take a look at it and say, the area structure plan for the land area is going to look like this. And you got it up there on your projector, but there's no place in the town for you to walk in and see that and see what other areas are being developed and making the decision on the big picture side of it.
Okay.
A couple of years ago, I don't know how many, the city decided, as far as I understand, to buy a bunch of land between here and Nisku. Now that land, as far as I understood, would have been identified within an area structure plan that was approved. Am I right or wrong?
Okay. Actually, your question is a valid one, but it had nothing to do with this particular bylaw. So at the break, I'll sit down with you and we'll figure out how to answer your question for you. But it doesn't do this specific bylaw, which we're concerned with right now. So we will make sure you're entered, you're heard through myself. We'll figure out how to address your question, but not this particular bylaw at this time. Thank you very much. I need your name for the record, please.
Jim Farrell.
Jim Farrell. Thank you, Jim. And I'll come talk to you at our break, so don't go anywhere for about 10 or 15 minutes, okay?
Yeah.
Take your time. You want to stay there for a while, you can if you'd like to. Stay there if you like. Thanks, Phil. All right, that concludes the public hearing. Well, we have to entertain each bylaw separately for second and third reading. So, Madam Clerk, would you please put on bylaw on the screen, please? I'll move that bylaw 1074 on the screen, please. I'll move that bylaw 1074-25. A land area structure plan amending bylaw be given, second reading. It's okay. I knew it was second reading. No problem. At this point, members of council, any questions or debate on second reading for bylaw 1074-25? Nathan, I can't see you. Do you have any questions or debate on second reading here?
Not at this time, nope.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing none, will you please initiate the voting process for second reading, please? Councillor Telebas, how do you vote?
In opposition.
Thank you. The vote carries 4-1 in favor. In opposition, Councillor Natellenbos. Madam Clerk, would you please put third reading on the screen for bylaw 1074-25? Member Council willing to move third reading? Councillor Penrod.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that bylaw 1074-25, Elan Area Structure Plan amending bylaw, be given third reading.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion on the motion of third reading?
Yes, Mayor, if you
Councillor
could.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. One of the points that I want to make and just make sure that I've said out loud here is we've talked about the subdivision, body having, the discretion to, make decisions one way or another on aspects of what was just in front of us. And I just want to be clear that from my mind, discretion doesn't mean it's an automatic yes. And I really want to make sure that that idea is hammered home, right? So much of planning and development's activities are, if it meets all these conditions, it's a yes. In my mind, discretion doesn't mean that. So, I will support third reading, Mayor, tonight, but I really want to make sure that discretion does not necessarily always equal a yes. And, it shouldn't. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councilor Ntalabas, do you have any comments on third reading?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I guess my biggest concern is I just don't know that my questions have been answered, especially in terms of affordability. I don't want to loosely use these terms and then pack in a bunch more density and hope that that's the case. I would like potentially a case study or maybe a little background information as to how we're getting those numbers. I know, obviously, as we're trying to sell this, whether it's the applicant or anyone else, we're always going to mention the positives, but I do have some concerns with an additional 2 to 3 dwelling units in one given block. That's potentially, 5 to 10 more vehicles, plus potentially some more additional dwelling units. I don't necessarily see the need to increase our density for this proposal here, and I do feel that it will have a safety impact. It'll cause overcrowding and will create additional parking issues. So for that reason, I just can't support this.
Thank you, Councillor. CEO Schwartz, you have a comment?
Yeah, I wanted to, I'm not going to enter into the density debate, that's not my role, but I did want to talk about the affordability. As we know, it's always market-driven. So there is no concrete black and white data or graph out there that's going to say affordability in Beaumont is this. It moves every day. So you're asking a question that we do not have an answer for.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Barnhart, you have the last comment before I go to the vote on third reading. You're on.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the presentation as well, all of them. I remember the excitement I felt when the land was first announced and how Dream's been at this for a long period of time. And I also remember the joy that people were experiencing just seeing the new homes and that whole area. We've kind of had a lot more development since then, so it doesn't seem as exciting as it did back then, but it definitely is still exciting for me to see that. And I think the walkability idea, the playgrounds, the green space, I hope that's all part of it, and I'm sure you've got some of that underway. And the administration is doing their darndest to make sure that we build everything so that it works for our residents. So I definitely will be in favor of this.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no further comments, would you please initiate the voting process for third reading? Councillor Ntalabas, how do you vote, please?
In opposition.
Thank you, Councillor. Third reading carries 4-1 in favor. Councillor Ntalabas in opposition. Thank you, Council. We will now proceed with second reading for bylaw 1075-25, Land Neighborhood Structure Plan bylaw, amending bylaw, public hearing. Sorry, not public hearing, third reading. So second reading, pardon me. Hey, doing two separately. There's too many things in my schedule here. I will move that bylaw 1075-25, Elan Neighborhood Structure Plan bylaw, amending bylaw be given second reading. With that, open up members of council for questions or debate on second reading. Councilor Ntalabas, do you have any questions or debate on second reading of this bylaw?
Not at this time, no.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no questions or further debate on second reading, would you please initiate the voting process for second reading, please? Councilor Ntalabas, second reading.
Opposed.
Thank you, Councillor. Motion carries. Second reading 4-1. Councilor Ntalabas in opposition. Would you please initiate, pardon me, would you please put on the screen, Madam Clerk, third reading for, I'll move that bylaw 1075-25, Elan Neighborhood Structure Plan bylaw, amending bylaw be given third reading. Discussion on third reading.
Yes, I may, Mayor.
Discussion?
Yeah. Yes, please.
Please proceed.
Perfect. Thank you. The reason I'm not supporting this bylaw here is My concern is that, as it mentions here, we're broadening the definition of low-density residential, but I think we're actually losing the definition of low-density residential by importing medium density into low-density residential. So I don't know that we necessarily need to be adding row housing into low density. It almost seems counterintuitive. So with that being said, I just don't think that it appropriately defines what low density should be, and for that reason, I don't support it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Penrod, you have the floor.
Thanks, Mayor Daniluk. Just take my opportunity at this stage to voice my support for these amendments. I think what you're hearing tonight and what you've continued to hear in these kind of debates and in the public hearings is we've got a healthy and ongoing conversation happening in our community as we grow around some of the pinch points of the growth that we're experiencing, but also this aspiration that we have to grow and this sense that we know where we're headed. I think we've got a really solid municipal development plan in Beaumont. I've read it cover to cover. I endorse it wholeheartedly. Moving from here 40 years into the future doesn't happen without some missteps or some potholes or trip ups along the way. And I hope that we take the opportunity to learn lessons from those. And I think we've done some of that work tonight even in some of the work that we've done to amend other bylaws. I don't think the way forward is to try to drive into our future looking in the rear view mirror, driving in reverse there. So that is to say, when we have a misstep and we have something that goes poorly in the community, I think we learn from it and we make the adjustments necessary to continue forward in our solid plan that we have. I think that plan is for a community that is diverse, a community where people of all ages and socioeconomic classes, people who have lived in this part of Alberta for a long time and people who are new to Alberta, and those people are coming in droves, can all find a home and a place to belong where they feel valued and welcomed. That's the story over 100 years of Beaumont. People that live here, making space, even if it's a little messy at times, making space for people who want to come here. And that's what brought my family here, and I hope to continue that Beaumont tradition. So that's why I'm in favor of this amendment tonight. And I'll just close by saying, I think everything that we've said about this particular NSP, this is, you might get called a buzzword, but in my mind, this is a gentle densification. The risk is low here, and we get a chance to see how it plays out in Elan 1. And then to Councillor Van Nieuwkerk's point, I would support the idea that I don't want discretionary to mean it's an automatic yes if you bring something to us. It's got to make sense for current residents, and it's got to make sense in how we're navigating into our future according to our high-level plans. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Councillor. With that, I'll initiate the voting process, please, for third reading. Oh, where's my cursor? Councillor Natelebas, how do you vote?
Opposed.
Thank you, Councillor. The third reading carries 4-1. Councillor Natelebas in opposition. All right, with that, it's 7:28. Normally you take about a 10-minute break around 7:30. So with that, we'll be in recess for 10 minutes, and we'll come back. Oh, that old TV show is zapping, we're gone. Okay. All right, thank you. We are back live after a short break. We'll continue with our agenda. Item 7.1, the 2024 year-end financial report. Mr. Wachak, I believe you're presenting this evening, so when you're ready, Jay, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just going to say I'm a little bit sad. I don't know what's happening out in the world tonight, that I thought it'd be full house for the finance equivalent of the Stanley Cup tonight. Really, we put in a lot of hours through the year, and then the year end happens, and that's like the start of playoffs, and we spend the next 4 months trying to get everything all sorted out. So this is like our cup final tonight. So all that other stuff doesn't really matter. Anyways, I also going to apologize in advance a little bit. The technical nature of the report and stuff is not my usual presenting style, so I am going to have to be paraphrasing and reading a lot of the report, so just bear with me. It's not my preferred reporting or speaking style, but you're just going to have to bear along. So with that, this report provides council with the financial results for the 2024 municipal operating, utility operating, and capital budgets, and the 2024 surplus for each, as well as the closing balances of the city's reserves. Preparing financial statements in accordance with PSAS is part of the MGA legislation, and each municipality must prepare and present their financial statements and the auditor's report and make it available to the public by May 1st. However, as council is aware, we did seek an extension due to the complete change in financial leadership within the city. So we requested 30 days from the province, and we'll be filing our statements by May 30th. On the municipal operating side, the third quarter forecast projected a $450,000 deficit, but the final year-end result came in at a $2.5 million deficit. And before everybody panics and there's riots in the street, that's largely due to two significant land transactions that happened in the fourth quarter last year, where we purchased and sold 2 different pieces of land in response to for the school sites. There's also some other elements that contribute, but those are really the 2 big swings from the Q4 forecast. On the revenue side, in 2024, we approved a 6.45% tax increase, which equated to $28.3 million in tax revenue. That funds our operations. We also utilize other revenue streams like sales user charges, government transfers, rental fees, et cetera. The total budgeted revenue was $56.2 million. In 2024, we received $1.8 million of additional revenue over the budgeted amount, largely attributed to license permits and fines, sales and user charges, and franchise fees, and there was a slight offset from a shortfall in investment income. Detailing some of the license permit and fine revenue that exceeded budget by $0.8 million was largely due to anticipated increased volume in planning and development permitting, engineering permitting, and there was a small offset in protective services fine revenue shortfall. Sales and user charges also was over budget by $0.7 million, again largely attributed to planning and development, recreation, and infrastructure, with a shortfall in childcare. Finally, franchise fee revenue was $0.4 million higher than budgeted due both to account growth and usage, but investment income did not perform as well, coming in at $0.2 million below budget. On the operating expense side, our municipal operating expense budget of $55.6 million was exceeded by $0.3 million. So that's actually not bad. It came in within 0.5% of our approved budget. The main overage was due to increased personnel costs. That was $1 million over budget, but was offset by savings in contract and general services, utility and network expenses, and grants. Those personnel overages occurred, again, in planning and development due to the high volume of permit. They brought in way more revenue, so they have the offsetting expenses to match that, as well as protective services, corporate analytics and technology, infrastructure, and community services. And then there were some departments that were below budget, with the largest being finance, largely due to vacancies. Contracted and general services savings were attributed to finance, and that's largely due to the ERP implementation being on hold last year, and we did not spend nearly as much as we had intended. That's continuing now. Infrastructure, protective services, and people services, and CAT all had savings as well. These savings were offset by additional expenses, as I mentioned, in planning and development and community services, and utility network expenses were under budget due to savings in CAT. And then there was an underspend on grants in corporate transactions. In the transfers, the net municipal operating surplus before transfers was a surplus of $1.5 million, which is good news from an operations perspective. Largely that was due to the transfers. We only drew $0.1 million from the operating reserves, and we contributed $6.8 million to capital reserves and pay-as-you-go, as well as we had recovery from the utility budget at $2.1 million. Transfers from reserve are $1.9 million unbudgeted, or under budgeted, pardon me, as reserve funding is only accessed if we're needing to cover the draw. Contributions to reserve and pay-as-you-go are 2.8 million over budget, largely due to the unbudgeted purchase of lands for the school site at $6 million, and then the sale of land, different set of land for $3 million. So net transfers reduced that surplus by $4 million into a net deficit of $2.5 million. Utility operations, utility revenues came in at $1.7 million favorable, largely due to sales and user charges and development levies, as well as contributions from other groups. This is largely attributable to water usage increased by 3.3%, as well as wastewater processing rates increased by 25%, which both contributed to the $0.9 million favorable variance. Utility expense came in slightly over budget at $0.1 million, with decreased contract and general services, but then there was an offsetting overage in materials and supplies, which is the water sales, aligns with the surplus from the sales and user charges. Overall, utility operations netted a $1.9 million surplus. On capital, at year end, 66% of the capital budget had been spent. Projects not completed by year end have been carried forward into the 2025 budget through the carry forward process to be completed. Pardon me. In 2024, 45% of the total capital budget was allocated to the joint high school site assembly project, and there contributed savings of 6% by changing the location to the capital budget. Renewal budget, 65% of the budget had been spent in 2024. The big shortfalls or the big underspends was the street sweeper, which has now been received and I believe is doing fantastic work out in the street. And then work on the sports field renewal that hadn't been completed yet. Any savings that are associated with reserves stay within the reserves that they had been held and are not used for anything else. On our growth side, the largest variance was due to change in strategy for the provision of the new school site. So the joint high school site assembly allocation contributed to 70% of the budget, and then completed using an alternate strategy saved 14% on the budget from the original approach. Utility water system renewal, main pump house renewal and water system renewal were in progress at year end, and their spending equals 44%, and they continue on into 2025. Reserves. The municipal operating budgets only required, as I said, $0.1 million, and the utility operating did not require any. The municipal draw was 1.8 less than budgeted, largely due to the pause in the ERP project. The remaining difference, as I said, is attributed to best practice and only drawing if required. On the capital side, $6.1 million of the anticipated $4.5 million was required to fund capital, and the overage was from an unbudgeted land purchase of $1.7 million. And then again, any budgeted funds that were not used remain in their reserve. The reserve position, so the financial stabilization reserve is currently forecasted or does have a balance below the optimal range, which is between 5 and 15% of the prior year's expenses, which equates to about 5 to 15, or sorry, probably 2.5 to $8 million. Our fleet and equipment, parks, technology, both have balances that are below optimal range or are not enough to meet the demand over the next 10 years. The economic development reserve is below the minimum balance targeted at $1 million, and the transportation renewal reserve is below the minimum balance of 2% of our total tangible asset cost. I will be doing a reserve review this summer and coming back to council in early September to talk about the outcomes and new structure that I'm being putting forward. And we may see a recommended increase in allocation as part of the budget. So there's a future little nod that's coming. Financial analysis. So following this 7.1, I will be presenting the financial statements from a PSAS perspective, and then our partners from the audit firm will be speaking more on that. But there is a reserve transfer required to make up the shortfall, and as we leave this one, so I just want to stress that the $2.5 million deficit position is municipal operations and does not include things like the library or capital transfers. There's equity elements, and so the deficit, as I talk about here, is not the same as what will be on the PSAS statements as we go forward. So I just want to be clear that that is not the shortfall that we are facing financially. but it's from a pure operations perspective, the deficit position. And then, so utilities has a surplus position, and so we'll be recommending to transfer that surplus into utility reserve. And in the event that council chooses not to fund the deficit recommendation, we would then be non-compliant with the MGA, which says that we must shore up any deficit position through reserves. I'm not going to go through all the attachments, but I'd be happy to take any questions if there were questions pertaining to any attachments.
Thanks, Jay. Appreciate that. A couple of questions popping up here. So I'll start with Councillor Penrod, followed by Councillor Barnhart. Phil, you have the floor.
Thanks, Mayor Daniluk. My first is an observation, and maybe give Jay an opportunity to speak to this, but I know through our budget processes, we often have discussions around why this renewal figure for a new pickup truck comes in at so much more than what other people in the community think that they would be able to acquire it for. And one of the answers we got back is that this is the money that's designated. And of course, we're going to go out to market and we're going to get I think I'm almost quoting you, we're going to go out to market, we're going to get the best price possible, and anything that's not used under that just stays in the reserve, right? And that shows up in your report here under renewal, where we have a 6% savings, so 6% under what we budgeted for. That's just people in procurement going out and doing good work and taking seriously their responsibility to shepherd the money of the whole community well. So just wanted to, feel free to speak to that if you want, but I wanted to pat you on the back for that.
100% true. Thank you.
That was a quick kudos, but hey. They're far and few between kudos, just so you know. I take a little more time on that one, let that one absorb in, let it sink in, enjoy the moment. Anything else, Phil? You're good? Councillor Barnhart, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you very much. You make it sound like, it's an easy thing to do because you just read all of this stuff, like I know this is all second nature to you, but my goodness, there's a lot of moving parts here. So kudos to you and your department, truly, because it is a lot of hard work. My question is a small one. It's just basically my interest area of childcare. I'm wondering what happened there, because thinking $100,000 in a childcare is kind of significant. So can you just elaborate on that?
Give me one.
If you can.
Open up my sheet here. I don't have the specifics around the whys, but as I look at my childcare, we were 100,000 just short from anticipated revenues on that side, and so I don't know if we don't have our community services part.
So I might have to do some kind of, and I don't know if I want to do an inquiry on that or not, but it seems odd to me considering that we're always full and we charge full fee to the parents who can afford it. And it's just wondering.
I'll take that away and I can bring that back to you.
Would you be?
Yes.
That would be great. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Just one question. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Telebus, any questions at all? I'm not on my screen right now. There you are.
No, I'm good at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Newkirk, any questions? If not, that's okay. All right, thank you. No further questions for Jay? Awesome, I appreciate that. So I believe we need a motion then to
Except for information.
accept for information.
Mayor, I move that the May 27th, 2025 report, 2024 year-end financial report be received for information.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion on the motion? Nathan, any questions?
Nope.
Thank you. Please initiate the voting process. Council, would you please vote? Councillor Telebus, how do you vote?
In favor.
Thank you, Councillor. That carries unanimously, 5-0 in favor of the motion. Thank you. On to item 7.2. Statements continues.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So item 7.2, this is the annual consolidated financial statement approval. Administration presents the City of Beaumont consolidated financial statements, I need to slow down, and audit results for the year ended December 31st, 2024. Administration requests that Council approve the City of Beaumont draft financial statements. Before Council provides approval, the external auditors will provide information on the results of the audit through their presentation of the City of Beaumont audit results. And again, as per the MGA, the audited financial statements will be posted publicly on the City of Beaumont website. The financial analysis, so as I mentioned just moments ago, the $2.5 million shortfall is not the same from a PSAS perspective. So the net impact of the 2024 year is a net municipal operating deficit of $1.7 million. The amount will be covered by transfers from Financial Stabilization Reserve and the Transportation Renewal Reserve. In addition to impacting the infrastructure replacement going forward, this overage reduces our Financial Stabilization Reserve to zero. These outcomes will impact the city's ability to fund operating and capital in the future and will heavily impair our ability to react to any unforeseen events. In addition, the city generated a net surplus in its utility operations of $0.4 million. Administration recommends transferring the net surplus to the utility reserve. The annual financial statements and the financial information are typically due to be filed by May 1st. The city applied for extension to May 30th, 2025. Additional time was required to complete new work relating to the wholesale change in financial leadership within the city. And with that, I would invite my audit partner, Ms. Ashley Zutz, to speak to the findings.
Please join us. Welcome back to council. Another year's gone by already.
Thank you,
So,
everybody.
Please begin when you're ready. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. So I believe everybody in their package has a report that's labeled City of Beaumont to report to the council in front of them. I'm going to speak to it if it doesn't come up on the screen from here. So we are required to meet with council annually to go through the year-end audit. So you either typically see us twice, once at planning or once at year-end, but we combine the results here today. So we're going to go through the significant items that we are to highlight. So we are if you go to the next page on the executive summary, we are substantially complete the year-end audit. On the right-hand side, you will see 5 bullet points, sorry. Those bullet points were at the date of this report being issued, so the 20th. The first 2 items are now done, and with the last 3 items and the last 3 bullets are financial statements. So extended right up until council approves the financial statements today. We've also met with the library independently, and their financial statements will also be dated today. As you're aware, we do take a substantive-based approach or a risk-based approach, so we would be here all year long if otherwise. So the areas of greater risk of material misstatement, we spend more time and attention on there. It does not mean that those items that are what we consider small don't get tested or picked in our samples there. If we go to our next page of audit risks and results, so some areas that we consider significant risks, so require additional attention, would include fraud risk from revenue recognition. So this is applicable to all entities. It's a presumed risk of fraud under the Canadian auditing standards. So specifically, we look around government transfers, both operating and capital and deferred revenue. On the right-hand side, we've highlighted specific procedures that we did do in addition to detailed testing. There were no issues that were noted as part of our audit results that we need to communicate today. The other area is around fraud risk from management override. So regardless of the size of the organization, whether you have full segregation of duties in your finance department or only have one person doing it all, this is a presumed risk of fraud as well. So items that we look at include tracing to manual journal entries to support, and if there's any management bias in any estimates. So again, no issues to bring to attention of council. If we flip to the next page, so the area we do spend a significant time, and if you were here last year, we talked a lot about this as well, is the asset retirement liability. So this relates to assets that the city owns or has control of, that they would have an obligation the easiest one to think about is asbestos. So if you disturb the asbestos or you are about to demolish a building or sell it, you would have a legal obligation to remediate that work. Management has done an assessment that they looked at last year, and they continue to look at new information this year to ensure that the estimate remained reasonable. So we know last year they engaged a third-party expert to help develop what that estimate looks like and how much that future cost would incur to the city. So they looked at those estimates and assumptions and considered them to remain appropriate for the current year end. The one thing we will note, and this is where PSAS makes things a little bit more complicated, is they say it will cost you $100 in 20 years to fix this. We bring that back to today's dollars today. So that's that 2.17. We spend extra time on this amount. As you can imagine, there's a liability on your books for $934,000 that represents future costs to the city have this remediation need to be completed or when it needs to be completed. We also inquire of fraud and illegal acts, which nothing came to our attention from discussions with management or council throughout the year. And then we know management does hire experts, especially around the asset retirement obligation, and we look at those qualifications to make sure that they are sophisticated or have the qualifications to make that estimate and be relied upon, and no areas brought to our attention. Next page also talks about additional accounting estimates that we do look at, so that includes collectability of accounts receivable, your useful life of your capital assets, contingent liabilities if there's any, and any contaminated site liabilities. There is no contaminated site liabilities, but there is an asset retirement obligation that we do look at. Next page is our summary of our adjustments and unrecorded misstatements. So the first chart here these are adjustments that were identified when we discussed with management as part of our audit procedures that are reflected in the financial statement. So they're posted within there. Overall, nothing that it would be significant or concern. I would call this, with complete changeover in finance team, this is a very clean audit to be seeing here today. So just want to make sure, kudos to the finance team. It's not an easy task when we come in, and there's little legacy over the last year. It takes some additional time. First one is, so overall, what the adjustments have done is decrease your assets by about 500,000 and increase the liabilities of 504. It's a timing recognition, so nothing from that perspective that we were worried about. The next page highlights items that we identified that are not reflected in the financial statements. And this is just a presentation item that we identified on the statement of operations. It has no impact to the net deficiency that we reported. And when we talked with management, they were comfortable based on the quantitative and qualitative factors around the adjustment that they would not post it in the current year. We concurred with management. So upon approval of the financial statements, we are willing to accept the unadjusted misstatement. From a disclosure matter, there's no items that we presented that management did not incorporate into the financial statements as well. Other reportable matters, so as part of our audit, we are required to understand controls and processes around financial reporting. So that doesn't extend to operational controls. However, if we do find efficiencies or advisory comments in those areas, we would bring those forward to management. Based on our results around, or our findings and inquiries around financial reporting, we do not have any reportable observations to bring forward to council today or to management. We continue to highlight cybersecurity, and I guess artificial intelligence is the other area, the hot topics that we are often seeing in organizations, and how those interplay into the finance department, and whether appropriate policies are being considered in the current year. So we do talk about that with management, and it is on their radar as well. We remain independent of the city. We do include our annual independence letter in the package that you've seen today. Technical highlights, so at the very back of these appendices are some very small font technical reading for anyone who's having or has an epiphany that accounting is for them. So I just want to highlight there is significant changes coming down to the PSAS world that is going to fundamentally change what your financial statements look like. So this will be retroactive to 2026 is where we're looking. So we are going to work with management and finance team. There's going to be lots of training available to all sorts of organizations. So you can not only management be prepared, but have council be prepared of what the results will look like and how that will change. From an auditing perspective or an assurance perspective, no significant changes in our auditing standards that are expected to impact the city either in the current year or going forward. Appendix A, for those that are familiar, it's more detail on our audit approach. It highlights roles and responsibilities of council and management and our firm, and also our 5-stage approach that we take. So there's nothing in those that I would want to highlight, and yes, you have specific questions. And Appendix B also just highlights some additional areas. One more page down. There you go. Appendix B, one more. There you go. Some additional areas that we do focus on. So accounts payable. So we do some procedures, making sure that all liabilities are recorded in the appropriate year. And we do look at the property and taxes and sales tax, the appropriateness of the revenue recognition in the year to make sure they're recorded in the right period. Appendix C is our draft independent auditor's report. This is a lot of words to say that it is a clean audit opinion from there. So we do highlight the responsibilities of management and those charged with governance or city council and that of the firm from there. So it will be dated today upon approval of the financial statements. other appendices are the representation letters that we'll have management sign, and then our letter of independence. And then this gets issued in final form after today's meeting. We just wanted to make sure all information was captured correctly, so management will have it not in draft.
Perfect. That concludes your presentation?
That is it.
Thank you very much. Any questions for our auditor on the statements presented?
No, thanks for asking.
Thank you. See no questions for...
Thanks for asking.
Thank you. See no questions for our presenter. Oh, Councillor Penrod, under the wire.
Thanks, Mayor. I noticed with interest, just on page 3 of your report, under the deliverables, thanks, by the way, Ms. Zutz, for your taking us so expertly through
It's all good.
things that we don't think about on a day-to-day basis. So appreciate you guiding us through. Just with respect to what I would perceive to be additional pieces here, there's an audit report on the Bibliothèque de Beaumont Library. That's standard practice, I think, is that we kind of roll that into the city's audit process?
So in accounting standards, the city considered to be controls the library at this point, so therefore the results are consolidated into their financial statements. From a legal perspective, they are required to have their own standalone entity financial statements as well, so that's why there's two separate.
Okay, thank you. And the other was just the review report on the City of Beaumont Family and Community Support Services.
Yes.
Is that also standard, or is that an additional piece that we added this year, or?
Nope, that is standard under the grant agreement. Because you receive a certain threshold of dollar values, they require a review engagement on the use of those funds. So we do that, and it was due at the end of April, so we just met that deadline.
Yeah, so that's part of the annual FCSS reporting to the provincial
That's
government?
exactly what that is. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thanks, Mayor. That's everything.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Newkirk, Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just wondering if you could speak to the, I think it's number 16, contingencies part in our report. I don't know if, I've kind of lost track if this is an appropriate question for yourself or administration, but there was the, sorry, I lost my page here, folks. Here we go. Commitments. So it was page 247 of 306, number 16, commitments. So it is basically a section in the report that outlines the outstanding commitments that the city has to, to leases and, contracts and all of that piece. So if this question is for you, great, and if it's for administration, pass it along. But if you could explain the value rationale and why this part is included in here. I quite like it, but I just want to hear from you, like, why is this here? What's the value? What's the intent? What's the purpose?
For sure, that's a great question. So what it's there is under PSAS accounting standards, when you recognize a liability, there's a timing that you recognize it. And under certain contracts, you may have entered, let's say, a construction contract's a really good example, where I'm going to use Graham Construction, for instance. You've entered into a legal obligation with them to outflow $60 million to build something, but you've not yet incurred any of that money. You would want your users of the financial statements to know that I've incurred and I'm going to have future outflow of $60 million. It's just right now they haven't provided any services, so it's not in our balance sheet from there. So it allows users to understand future cash flows that you're committed to that are not reflected in the statement of financial position.
Yeah, great. And the highlighted items in here is, the RCMP contract, for instance, and, to the end of the RCMP contract, it's about 8.66 million. Some leases with photocopiers that are kind of inconsequential, and a mail machine, which is inconsequential. But then, at the other end of it is some leased space, right, that expires in 2030. And I do want to highlight that, there's a reason that you lease things for a long time, and it's to get a better rate, right? And so, cost not incurred, when you are able to couple a longer term commitment in, although it seems like a lot because it comes in at $916,000 over the term, it's actually quite a prudent spend. So, and I'm happy that it's these commitments are highlighted there. So, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no further questions, thank you again for presenting.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. So, Madam Clerk, I know we have 3 recommendations on the financial audit part of our agenda at 7.2. Can we do all three together on one motion? We require three separate motions on the recommendation in the report. I'm assuming we can do all three together.
That's correct, Mayor. We can do all three together.
Okay, please put all three on the screen, and I'll be happy to make that motion to move our discussion along.
1 minute.
Take your time. Or easier to do individually. If it's already got on the screen set up individually, we can do it individually if it makes it easier. Let's do that.
I can do it quickly if you just give me one.
Okay, first motion is that council adopt the 2024 audited consolidated financial statements as set out in attachment 1, 2024 audited consolidated financial statements. Discussion on the motion, members of council? Nathan, any questions?
No.
Thank you. Seeing no questions, please initiate the voting process. Councilor Telebas, how do you vote?
In favor.
Thank you. Council, that carries unanimously, 5-0 in favor of the motion. I'll move the second motion that that the transfer of municipal reserves to cover the 2024 net municipal operating deficit in the amount of $1,703,808 from the Financial Stabilization Reserve, $1,308,551, and the Transportation Reserve, $395,257 be approved. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Penrod, you have the floor on this motion.
Thanks, Mayor Daniluk. Just a question for Mr. Bohacek. Understand the recommendation of the funds being transferred from financial stabilization. That would seem to be the reserve that is most purpose-built for this situation. Ideally, we would have enough in there or more to handle this transaction. We clearly don't. Thus, your additional recommendation, which just begs the question, why transportation? And is that actually the transportation renewal line?
Oh, hang on, Jay. Give me a second. There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the councillor. So yes, at this point, it's an arbitrary. I picked the largest reserve at the moment that could afford the most impact at the moment. While we do my reserve review over the summer and then come back in the fall, we'll be taking a look at the structure, how we're setting those up, and what the balances should be. So for now, it's just it'll do until we can have further conversations.
Yeah, and further to that, I don't love the part of your report that talks about the very real risk that we run with the zero balance in our financial stabilization reserve. We have very recent examples of needing that financial stabilization for reasons other than, like, I would call this situation kind of an accounting situation, but COVID is not so far back in our rearview mirror, and other emergencies like that seem to keep coming up. So would like to see that financial stabilization replenish as soon as possible. I understand there's plans and reports coming. The question, I guess, subsequent is, to your point of, we maybe not best practice, but we dipped into the transportation renewal to finish this transaction. If we landed in a real emergency kind of situation in the short term, would that be a possibility to make a further transfer or to handle through the reserves that way?
So through the mayor to Councillor Penrod, we would have to craft a motion and design it so the reserve structure is binding and currently has set things that we're supposed to do with it. We can, with council motion, get around those from time to time if we have to, under be an exception kind of basis. So if pushing came to shoving, that it was really critical that we access more dollars, then yes, we could do that, but they are generally prescribed to be for certain usage. And our friends, the auditors, really don't enjoy when they're not being used in the way that they're intended, so.
I should have said before my question, Ms. Zoot's earmuffs for this part, but I suppose your reports also lay out that we do have access we've been prudent, we have access to a line of credit that we don't use by practice, but if we really needed it, we could borrow from that or from another source as well.
Yeah, that is true.
Thank you. Just wanted to add a little bit of that. We know we're taking a risk here, and trust that there's good plans in place. Looking forward to more conversations on how we navigate forward. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Newkirk. Stephen?
Yeah, thank you. I wasn't going to say much on this, but, just further to Councillor Penrod's questions and comments, for me, this is a reality check, and it's a stop and think moment for council. And I think we hear from administration often that, we need to be prudent with our decisions and such. I look forward to the reserve study coming back after the summer, because that'll be the next step in this reality check, and then there will be an election, and then there will be a budget in front of us again, right? So that's, this is all part of the process. The numbers aren't quite as stout as we would like to see them right now, but that this moment in time, this is where we're at, and administration has made the best decisions with the best information they have to get us here, and that's how we'll continue to move forward. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Telebas, any questions or comments on this one?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Seeing no further comments, would you please initiate the voting process? Councilman Telebas, how do you vote?
In favor.
Thank you. Council, that carries unanimously, 5-0 in favor of the motion. Next, our last motion on this area, I'll make it for brevity purposes, that the transfer of the 2024 net utility operating service in the amount of $396,396 to utility reserve be approved. Discussion on the motion. Councilor Telebas, any questions?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Please initiate the voting process on this motion. Councilor Telebas, how do you vote?
In favor.
Thank you, Councillor. That carries unanimously, also 5-0 in favor of the motion. Thank you to our 3, Section 3471, Tax Concession Request Roll Number 009724. Mr. Paharchuk, I believe, Paycheck, you'll be presenting again? You're ready, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is a report prepared by administration in regards to seeking a tax concession. In most cases, tax exemptions are governed by provincial legislation. However, council does have the authority to cancel, reduce, refund, or deferred levy tax on an individual group of property owners, on an individual or group of property owners. The MGA section reads that cancellation, reduction, refund, or deferral of taxes, 347.1, if a council considers it equitable to do so, it may, generally or without respect to a particular taxable property or business or class of taxable property or business, do one or more of the following with or without conditions. A, cancel or reduce tax arrears. B, cancel or refund all or part of a tax. Or C, defer the collection of tax. There are several important considerations related to council's exercise of this authority. First, council's authority to cancel, reduce, refund, or defer property tax is limited to municipal property tax only. Education property tax is levied by the provincial government, and full amount levied must be remitted to the province. Second, any decision under this authority can only apply to the current year or previous years. It is not an ongoing exemption. So, unlike an exemption where a property can be exempted from the property tax on a go-forward basis, tax cancellations, reductions, refunds, or deferrals need to take place annually to maintain a reduction. Third, Section 203 of the MGA prohibits council from delegating this power to administration. And finally, any cancellation, refund, reduction, or deferral of all or part of a property tax impacts all property owners because these amounts must be made up by other property owners. So it is imperative that council exercises authority in an equitable manner that aligns with the obligation of councillors to consider the interests and welfare of the whole municipality. Administration receives numerous requests to cancel, refund, reduce, or defer property taxes each year for a variety of reasons and instructs ratepayers that administration does not have the ability to grant the request. In these situations, administration informs the resident on the opportunity to present their request to council in accordance with Section 347 of the MGA. In order to maintain equity for all property owners, the only instance administration would recommend council grant a Section 347 would be if there was an error in fact regarding the assessment, calculation of taxes, or application of penalties. The resident is requesting that some or all of their municipal taxes be refunded and or reduced for 2024 and 2025 due to a perceived level of service issue. Council Policy C-50 Property Tax Relief dictates that council-approved tax relief must fall into one of three categories: A, error in fact; B, tax-exempt properties while under construction; or C, compassionate grounds. The resident's claim does not fall in any of these categories. So, as I said, council's decision related to property tax relief does have a financial impact. The specific costs on the scope of the request, the maximum amount that could be requested for 24-25 is $5,912.90. And with that, I'd take questions.
Thank you, Mr. Marczyk. Any questions? If not, I'll ask the motion be placed on the screen. Councilman Newkirk, you have the floor.
Move that the request roll number 009724 for 2024 and 2025 be denied. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Would you speak to the motion?
Yeah, please.
Please do.
Yeah. So first of all, I would say that, the resident is exercising their right to ask, and that's what's going on here. For me, I think the work or response that needs to be done is probably more around one of communication of what it means to be, air quotes, responsibility remains with the developer, or, does it fall to the city? Numerous times per year, we do run into situations where there are developer responsibility type things that may be perceived to have been disregarded or slow or late, and the city delivers the message that go talk to the developer because it hasn't been handed over to us yet. So for me, I think that's where I would want to focus the conversation here, would be to challenge administration to develop some kind of communication around what does it mean to have responsibility still with the developer versus having been transferred to the city. So the big picture, that's where my head's at. Secondarily, the applicant lives in a construction zone and it rains and there's mud, and it happens throughout the entire municipality. This having mud on the streets is not, it doesn't just happen in the applicant's neighborhood. So, I don't think the applicant is alone in having muddy streets and sidewalks, and I don't think this is a realistic ask. So that's where I'm at. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councilor Telebus, I can't see you. Do you have any questions on this motion?
I do. I guess first one, just because I can't see, but the applicant is not present. Is that correct?
Yeah, Councillor, the applicant did apply to come to open forum on this topic and did not attend.
Okay, perfect. Question for administration. I do appreciate that this was taken off consent agenda. I just want to confirm that's our path forward.
Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor, through to Councillor Natellenbos. It was taken off consent agenda because the resident had registered for open forum, but he did not show up.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So I guess just a few comments. I echo a lot of what Councillor Van Nieuwkerk said, just in the sense that whether it's the builder or the developer, I'm hoping that the compliance team that we're putting together will be able to better monitor some of this stuff. There's definitely some of those folks that do kind of abuse the area in the sense that mud's being tracked all over. And if we don't have the folks to monitor it and make sure we're compliant with our requirements, then it makes it difficult. However, based on our policy and what was described there by Jay, I do not feel that this qualifies for that. I would also encourage any applicant to make sure that they attend council meetings, because potentially there's some missed information, and we're not given the opportunity to ask those questions in scenarios like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no further comments, would you please initiate the voting process on the motion? Councillor Telewitz, how do you vote?
My apologies, Mayor. I can't see if it's supporting the applicant's request or...
No problem, Nathan. I'll read it to you. That the request for tax concessions pertaining to Roll 009724, 2024 and 2025 be denied. So if you were voting yes, you'd be in favor of not granting the tax concession. How do you vote?
Thank you. In favor, please.
Thank you, Council, for clarifying. Always good to make sure we're on the same page. Thank you, Council. That passes unanimously, 5-0 in favor of the motion as presented. Next on our agenda is item 7.4, motion for minutes. When it's on the screen, Councillor, please make your minutes. When it's on the screen, Councillor, please make your motion and speak to it when you're ready. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. This is the first of two here tonight. So I move that, yeah, thank you, Mayor. This is the first of two here tonight. So I move that by the August 26, 2025 regular council meeting, administration provide a report on a summary of all the existing, current construction, and permitted but not yet built properties with additional dwelling units, sorted by number of ADU in Beaumont, and include an updated map indicating all the locations within Beaumont.
Thank you.
And to speak to that, so I've prepared some notes here to try and keep succinct. Tonight I'm asking for council support on this motion. I've been asked a few times by residents for this type of information, and there seems to be some different stories being told within the community regarding how many properties have approved ADUs in them, how many ADUs and where they're located and such. The purpose of this motion is to gather the facts on this topic so that they are available for council and the public. The desired outcome would be a summary that shows how many properties with ADUs are existing, currently under construction, permitted and not built yet, and the numbers of each as is indicated. And they would be placed into a color-coded map indicating 1, 2, or 3 ADUs so that council and the public can see where they are. So there has been a version of this map that has been in front of council a couple of times. So, there will be a, kind of an update to that map. And from what I understand, a little bit of GIS work to do this. I hope it's not an onerous task. That is not the point here. The point is definitely to get the facts out and available for review and discussion within the community. So, Council, I ask for your support on this motion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, and I concur. There's been a lot of misinformation on social media about this stuff. This helps clarify the levels of playing field in terms of information. Councillor Penrod, followed by Councillor Barnhart.
Thanks, Mayor Daniluk. Councillor Van Newkirk, I think in general in favor of this. To your point, it's really just asking for a current update on something that has already been in front of council and therefore available to the public. I just want to make sure that what you're asking for and imagining here is similar to what I recall seeing, is that it's sort of a high-level summary of a neighborhood as opposed to like, we're not imagining a granular map that actually shows exactly where every additional dwelling unit is across the city. Is that correct? The reason for my asking, I would see more value maybe in a summary at a little bit higher level for a neighborhood without targeting specific properties, just because this is a hot topic in the community and sometimes opinions get a bit charged. It just brings a bit of a privacy concern, I think, for me around, I guess if a person really dug into land titles and things like that, they might be able to find some of that information anyway, but that's just where my mind goes.
Councillor, please.
Yeah, from my view, it's literally an update to a map that has already been created and in front of council a couple of times. How big the green, blue, or red dots are on there, whether or not you single out a house or a general area. Like the point of this is, here is where these types of things are, here is where those types of things are, and it should be an update to an existing map, right? This isn't about rooting out house number 52, right?
Yeah.
Like that's not what this is about. This is about what areas have what types, how many of the one additional dwelling unit, how many of the two, how many of the three are there actually in the community. Like that's the spirit of this.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I'll leave it to administration to make sure that we, keep some level of, privacy to this, right? Like, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Barnhart.
Councillor Penrod beat me to it because that was my concern, is the privacy piece that you mentioned. Councillor Van Newkirk, I appreciate where it's coming from, and I know it's probably too soon for the administration to answer any detailed questions on it, but I wondered if this would be in any violation of people's privacy if we went too close to the address and actually gave people that address. Can anyone answer that at this point, or is that something you'd need more?
Ms. Raymond, perhaps?
Sorry, can you just repeat part of that question? You were asking about the address?
Are there any privacy concerns from the administration point of view, and can we do, it sounds like Councillor Van Newkirk would be okay if it's at a higher level. I just want to make sure that if we were to go further and have addresses, whether that would be a violation of the privacy.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for that question through the mayor to Councillor Barnhart. We would be making sure that you wouldn't be able to identify the specific property. The previous map that had been provided, I believe, showed it either on a quadrant basis or by neighborhood basis with more of bubbles and a number inside of it. And we would probably look to do that similar level of detail here. That being said, these are all existing development permits, and they have already been probably put on our website at some point, but we don't provide identifying details. So we would be respecting any FOIP concerns.
Perfect, thank you. I'd be supporting it then.
Councilor Telebus, any questions?
Nope, thank you.
Thank you. Any last comments, Steve, before I go to the vote?
Yeah, just a quick one. As Ms. Raymond said, it's kind of like colored bubbles in a neighborhood is how it was previously put to us, and that's kind of what I expect getting back. What I would say is if anyone wants to know anything, they can use Spin 2 and pull a land title anyways. So inherently it is public information, although it's not easily findable. The spirit is not to root things up, it's to have a graphic and piece of fact that we can bring to community conversations. So, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, I will initiate the voting process, please. Councilor Telebus, how do you vote?
In favor.
Thank you. That carries unanimously, 5-0 in favor of the motion. Thank you, Councillor, for the motion. I believe, Councillor Newkirk, you have an additional notice of motion to come forth this evening. Please proceed.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I would move that by the August 26th, 2025 regular council meeting, administration prepare a report on options, including potential funding sources, for developing a City of Beaumont Community Growth Task Force that would explore the city's current growth strategy, including the fiscal, environmental, and social aspects of community growth, and develop a community engagement plan as part of that work. Thank you.
Wish to speak to your motion at this time?
Yes, I've prepared some notes here again. So tonight I'm asking for council support on this motion. As we all know, the year-over-year growth that we are and have been experiencing in Beaumont has been a lot, and there are no signs of it slowing. I have heard loud and clear lately that residents are feeling disconnected from the ability to provide input surrounding this growth. Now, I want to acknowledge that all of the mandated and obligatory public input and public touch points that are always completed in our current process will remain. But there is a significant time lapse that can occur, but I want to acknowledge that there's a significant time lapse that can occur between council's approvals, any administrative approvals, permits, and construction ultimately within the community. And I want to highlight that sometimes granted permits are not even acted on, and they are left to expire. So today, this is my attempt to kickstart a conversation around what a community growth task force could look like. In creating the wording in this motion with administration, my intent was for it to be flexible enough to explore options that could create more room for community input and thoughts. There should be room for administration to be creative with options. At the end of the day, the community has been clear that they are feeling disconnected from the conversations surrounding growth in Beaumont. Let's work together to be creative and come up with some new options for public input. But now, I also have a message for administration. So my message to administration is that I understand that the mandated public engagement portions of development exist and will continue to be followed. The purpose of this is not to replace those processes. Some wise words of wisdom that were shared with me, I'll share back. Development is not a democratic process, it's done by bylaw. This isn't going to change. And this is an opportunity to communicate more clearly, more often, more succinct, and any other more that we can think of. So what this is an opportunity to try and creatively figure out a way to include the communication in some community growth conversations. I don't have all the answers to this. The community is asking for a way to have input. This is an idea that I've come up with, and I can't think of any other way personally to kickstart this conversation than exploring some options like this That's why this is here, and that's why I'm here asking for your support. I think it's a novel idea. I think we have to start somewhere. I think this could be the somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I appreciate the comments and the logic behind your suggestion, your idea here. I'm supportive of the idea based on what you've said. Thank you. Any other members of council, any questions for Councillor Van Newkirk on his notice of motion? Councillor Tellenbos, any questions?
Nope, thanks for checking.
Thank you. Councillor Penrod? I just saw your finger moving towards the...
You got me, Mayor. Appreciate it. Yeah, I'll be really brief. I think this, for me, the reason that I'll be supporting this motion is appreciate the words that Councillor Van Newkirk shared regarding the integrity of our processes. I'm very confident in saying that Beaumont follows to the T every law, bylaw, federal, provincial, municipal. All the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed from our planning development department, and I appreciate the thoroughness with which they do their work. But this is, for me, a perception is reality situation. There is a perception, a feeling in the community that people are getting steamrolled, and whether the process is what it's supposed to be or not, that feeling remains. And so I think that's the spirit with which this motion comes forward, is how do we address that feeling in the community and rebuild a sense of trust? And that's challenging in these days. And so it takes work, it takes time, it's going to take some resources, but I think these resources would be prudently spent. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no further comments, Steve, a last question or last comment before I go to the vote?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Please initiate the voting process on this motion. Councillor Tellenbos, how do you vote?
In favor.
Thank you, Council. That carries 5-0 in favor of the motion. Thank you, Councillor. Next on our agenda is bylaws, land use bylaw, amending bylaw, educational use. Ms. Raymond, I believe you'll be presenting for first reading.
Thank you. That's quite a mouthful on that bylaw number, so apologize. So I don't have a fancy presentation for you tonight, so you'll just get to listen to me provide my report the old-fashioned way. So livable communities are cultivated through careful planning and dedicated care, which I think we've spent a lot of time talking about tonight. Bylaw 1083-25 proposes amendments to our land use bylaw to ensure that Beaumont remains a vibrant, inclusive place to live. It also needs to respect all of our different populations here. And we have the youngest population in the Edmonton metropolitan region. And as we know, our largest demographic is youth that are aged 0 to 15 years old, and they require childcare. And so one of the largest non-residential sectors in the city is those childcare facilities. And almost every commercial development proposes to continue to meet this core need in the city through providing additional childcare spaces. Our land use bylaw was designed to be flexible, nimble, and implement the goals and aspirations of the community as the city grows and changes. This means that each land use district has a mix of land uses, and these land uses are intentionally broad, and they include many similar types of uses that share the same types of characteristics and impacts to simplify the bylaw. Each district within the land use bylaw has a list of uses that are permitted at the discretion of the city or not allowed. And Beaumont's LUB delegates these decisions for development permits to the Development Authority. A permitted use must be approved if it meets the standards set out in the land use bylaw. The city cannot legally add conditions to the permit that go above and beyond what is required in the district requirements. A discretionary use requires the city to carefully consider the compatibility of the proposed development with surrounding land uses, and the city may attach conditions that it considers necessary to ensure compatibility of the development with its surrounding area. While the land use bylaw accounts for many factors that may occur with development, it can't reasonably address each and every potential scenario, and discretionary uses address this uncertainty. It allows the Development Authority to use their professional planning judgment to consider the impacts of development. So while the Development Authority is integrating learning to make our land use bylaw better, this is an issue-specific amendment which does not address any opportunities for review and continuous improvement in relation to our land use bylaw, which were identified at the May 20th Committee of the Whole meeting, where we talked about signage regulations or refining regulations for residential development for impact versus administrative burden. Evaluating other items, such as expanding the 100-meter buffer from existing schools and municipal reserve parcels to cannabis retail, to include all early education programs, or reviewing parking standards are not included in this review, as they would increase the complexity of this amendment. An amending bylaw specific to cannabis retail buffer zones is still forthcoming by the end of November, as per Council's previous motion. So I just want to define what childcare uses are, or facilities. They're within our education use. They're permitted in all land use districts within the city, and they're defined as development of public and private places of learning for any age, including licensed childcare facilities and/or research facilities. So this definition does include schools and daycares, but not day homes, which are discretionary under the home-based business major use. It's important to note that there are off-site impacts associated with education uses that our land use bylaw cannot mitigate. This use is permitted, and there are no specific use standards for this use class. These off-site impacts include traffic generation and parking issues related to pickup and drop-off times, and the inability for the Development Authority to consider the cumulative impacts of concentrations of these types of uses. So Bylaw 1083-25 is a proposed text amendment that will shift education uses from permitted uses to discretionary in all land use zones. This will enable the Development Authority to carefully evaluate proposals for education uses and mitigate any off-site impacts by being able to apply site-specific conditions to address concerns, including, where necessary, requiring a traffic impact assessment and providing the Development Authority the ability to refuse based on the results, approve as proposed, or approve with conditions to implement the TIA recommendations or other items that are required. As part of this, we undertook a jurisdictional scan. It's in your package as attachment 2, and you can take a look at it there, but we looked at a number of different municipalities in the Edmonton region and in Calgary. We looked at ones that were in close proximity to the city, as well as ones that had a similar high rate of growth that we're seeing, such as Airdrie, Cochrane, and we also included High River because it has the same type of land use bylaw that we do, which is a hybrid land use bylaw. It's form-based, and not your traditional zoning bylaw. There's only 3 of its kind within the province other than our own. So through our review, we learned that use standards, if they exist, typically deal with transportation and traffic-related matters. So they're looking at the staggering drop-off and pickup time for patrons, and they're ensuring that the development doesn't interfere with the traffic and the transportation network. And we took a relatively simple approach to our proposed changes, and we found that we are addressing the changes that are proposed in your package there. So those are to change education use from permitted to discretionary use in all districts as mentioned. This recognizes the unique context of Beaumont's broad mix of land uses in each land use district, which requires context-specific analysis for applications which may have impacts on surrounding properties, and then adding a use standard to each district, which is specific for education and more specifically for childcare facilities. And we're requiring that they shall provide an on-site drop-off area suitable to accommodate traffic associated with the use and limit any impact on the surrounding community. This is based on our best practice research. As you'll notice through the jurisdictional scan, you will see that they also dealt with on-site play areas and other municipalities, not all of them. We will not be regulating that because the physical space requirements are outlined in the early learning and childcare regulation, and we don't want to duplicate the regulation within our own bylaw. So we are recommending that council give first reading to this bylaw tonight. Following first reading, we are then going to reach out to the community, including local business owners, as well as proposed developers who are interested in opening this type of business, and inform them of the proposed amendment and discuss this with them. And we have tentatively scheduled this to come back for a public hearing, second and third reading on July 8th. And then, as mentioned before, a more comprehensive evaluation of what's working, not working with the land use bylaw is currently underway, and it'll help inform the comprehensive rewrite of the land use bylaw, which we will be including as a project for council's consideration as part of the 2026 budget in conjunction with an update to the municipal development plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Raymond. Appreciate the presentation. And any members of council have any questions for Ms. Raymond? I'll start with Councilman Newkirk, followed by Councilor Barnhart. Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Not necessarily a question, but a comment. I think this is a good catch ad and conversation to have, so thank you for bringing it forward. I can see how this could benefit some of the concerns in the community that have been raised lately, so thank you very much.
That was quick and easy. Appreciate that. Councilor Barnhart, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Yeah, I like the direction so far that I'm hearing, except for one area that I'm just wanting to question a little bit more to understand better. You seem to be saying that you're not going to go down the road of looking at specific regulations. And I understand that. I know that it is in the provincial mandate, but I also know that we have a long history in this community of raising the bar with childcare and looking at higher standards. And without going too far down that road, when I look at the jurisdictional report that you've got in here, and you've got Spruce Grove and Edmonton, explain to me why Edmonton says it's permitted, but then they have a whole bunch of use standards. And then Spruce Grove says it's discretionary, and they have one specifically around what I'm looking at as the outdoor play space. So I'm just wondering, it doesn't seem to matter whether you go discretionary or permitted, and then look at some of the specifics. Help me understand that.
Ms. Raymond?
Sure. Thank you, Councillor Barnhart. So you can have use standards for both permitted and discretionary uses within the land use bylaw. Just because permitted doesn't mean that it doesn't necessarily have to have use standards, but if there are use standards, it has to meet those specifically in order to be granted that permit by right. If it's discretionary, the development authority can ask for further information that it feels is needed. It does take those use standards, if they're there, into account, but it's actually looking at primarily what's the impact this is going to have on the neighborhood? Is this going to have negative impacts? What are those negative impacts that I need to be looking at? You're going through a list of things on a discretionary use that you're not able to go through on a permitted use. So that's really that difference there. So in a permitted use, if you're comfortable with it being allowed and happening everywhere, so I'll pick on residential. In every residential district, a single-family house or a single detached dwelling, it's permitted in all residential districts. That's the design of the residential district. But a commercial use that might have more traffic, like a drive-through, that is going to typically be a discretionary use, because now we need to be considering what the impacts on that transportation network are, or something like that. Similarly to why we don't want residential in an industrial area. We're trying to separate out some of those uses which aren't as compatible, or find ways that we can mitigate those so that they can work together, which is where the development authority's discretion comes in terms of looking at that proposal and being able to evaluate it. So more evaluation on a discretionary use. In terms of the on-site play area, actually Airdrie did have that in their bylaw, and it was something that they've removed recently. And they had removed it because it is in the regulation. And I do think that we do have a history of going above and beyond, but I can't compel somebody to go above and beyond the regulation. Where our bylaw would be in conflict with that, then it's not going to prevail. It's going to go back to the provincial standard over ours. So we don't want to be duplicating that. If it's in there and then the regulation changes and now we're at odds with that, then we're needing to go back and amend the bylaw and stuff like that, or not catch something. And they still have other licensing that they're going to have to meet, as you know. So they're going to have to go through and be able to get their license, and they'll need to demonstrate to the provincial authority that they have suitable on-site play areas and that sort of thing that meet the intent of the regulation. So we're not judging that. So they're looking at ratios and a bunch of other things that we aren't considering through the land use bylaw.
Okay. I appreciate your rationale. So my difficulty is in some of the provincial regulations. I know that's a different fight. In terms of the consultation, it says that local business owners and residents will be informed of the proposed amendment. Just wondering in terms of how far that goes. Is it all residents? Is it, how are you going to do that? Like, how are you going to figure out who you're going to talk to? Like, existing people that are building daycares are going to have one opinion, and then there's going to be other businesses or other residents nearby that might have opinions as well.
Absolutely. That's a great question. Probably for the residents, it will be put on our website, and it'll be more broad-based type of communication that this change is happening and that they can contact us. But for the local businesses, we are actually going to be, our economic development team goes on business visits, so we'll be tagging along with them on a business visit to talk with existing daycare operators. And then we're also, through our business attraction efforts, our economic development team is also heavily active there, and they're in touch with all of the different developers who are been making inquiries about building a daycare business. And so we'll also be meeting with them through that process, along with our friends in economic development. And then we will also be needing to engage with the school boards as well, because this is an education use, although we aren't intending on impacting theirs. So our intention is not really to say no here, it's just trying to take into account the different factors. So we'll be meeting with the different landowners. We'd like to meet with operators, because sometimes operators are different than landlords. So we'll be talking with a group of people. There is probably about the neighborhood of 10 to 15 daycare facilities that are operating within this city. It was 25, including home-based businesses that have a daycare in them. So,
just the only one I didn't hear you say, but you may have Chamber of Commerce?
We will be talking with the Chamber of Commerce through the liaison that we have there, which is our Director of Economic Development.
Okay. Appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Penrod.
Thanks, Mayor. I think, Ms. Raymond, you spoke to this earlier in our meeting tonight around what part of the process certain decisions impacts. And so I'm still trying to wrap my mind around what you had said earlier. And that's, here I'm just trying to get a sense of how broad and deep this change will reach to people that are currently kind of in the development pipeline. So I think it's safe to say that anyone with an existing business, they're already operating, that this is not going to affect them, although they're going to be invited to give some feedback. If a builder has the building permit to develop a site that includes space for a daycare, how would they be impacted?
Thank you. Through the mayor to Councillor Penrod. If they already have a permit, this will not impact them. We can't retroactively go back and apply the bylaw. It will only impact new daycares that will be opening in the city, or if they are, say, in their one bay and they want to expand to a second bay, then that daycare operator would be subject to the new requirement.
Thank you. That's helpful. That's the piece that I'm trying to wrap my mind around, is like, at what point does, say, a mixed-use building that has multiple commercial bays on the bottom, at what point in the process do they become dedicated that this is for this particular business? Is that always necessarily at the beginning of the building permit, or does that happen later on in some processes?
Oftentimes, if they know that they're going to be wanting a daycare to locate there are certain standards that they need to meet underneath the Alberta Building Code that would be a little bit different than, say, if you wanted to have a clothing shop. So they'll be designing their building slightly differently, maybe, to accommodate some of those, but you don't always know. And some of the ones where they're intending become an Original Joe's later with a nice patio. So, they are looking at that as they're developing new base buildings, because to Councillor Barnhart's point earlier, they're always looking at their amenity space for those playgrounds and trying to make sure that they work. So they're thinking about that. I think that daycares are one of the fastest growing segments. Like if somebody wanted to develop one, they're often filled very easily here at the city. So it seems to be an easy win for people to open for a business.
Thank you. Appreciate the answer, and just echo Councillor Van Nieuwkerk's comments that this seems like a good catch and something where glad to see that you're raising it and bringing this forward. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Talabas, you have any questions?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I guess just a question looking for clarification as it relates to the proposed changes, more number 2. I also think that what's been proposed, identifies an issue and is trying to resolve it, but looking for clarity as to how we would interpret an area suitable to accommodate traffic, as opposed to setting more defined standards like some of the other municipalities. And what I mean by that, one example is if we look at Strathcona County, they have 1 per 2 employees plus 1 per 10 persons for a minimum of 4 total parking spaces.
Yeah, you're on. You were on already.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, turning myself off and back on again. Yep. We didn't look at changing the parking regulations. I did do the math to look at that from a floor area perspective, and we are in line with other municipalities here as it relates to that. But we're also not looking at, say, like where Airdrie has gone into the maximum facility capacity plus the 1 stalls per staff. If we're going to go do that parking analysis, I'd like to look at more of a holistic approach on the different uses and making sure, I think, all of our parking regulations were in alignment, not just focusing on this one aspect, because I think that might change the way that we're looking at some of the other uses that are similar, where this is right now 2 parking stalls per 100 meters squared. So it is something we want to look at, but we didn't evaluate through here as we're just trying to capture this other one. And that one is going to require, I think, more analysis on our end to understand where parking supply is and some of the more nuances with parking. But we could adjust this if this is council's desire.
Perfect. So I guess the question would be, at what point would I put that forward? I like what's been presented thus far. Obviously, this is just first reading, but I would just like to see a little more defined detail as it relates to parking.
Yes, Councillor Natellenboss, if you would like to do that, then you should do that tonight.
Okay.
Are you suggesting perhaps a motion to request?
Or for us to go back and amend the bylaw, so I'm going to defer back.
Nathan, do you want to do that? You can maybe work with our clerk on that if you'd like to. It's up to you.
Yeah, I would like to go that route, but I would obviously like to work with planning and development to make that happen and not force a random number in terms of parking stalls. But I know it's a concern, and I just feel that the current definition supplied would be a bit too vague and hard to enforce.
How best do we make this work? Can we?
I think we can take that one away and probably look at that. If you wanted to send us, I'd like a little bit more detail as to what you would be kind of looking for that to be less vague. If you want more parameters around that about how we would apply that, or if you're looking for specific standards to be changed for parking.
Perfect. I will get that to you. Thank you.
Okay, just make sure we're moving along, make sure everyone's happy with the process. Thank you, Councillor. Any questions I have are already asked more or less or answered in various answers, so I have no further questions. So seeing no further discussion, I will ask West Administration to begin the voting process. Oh, sorry. Do you need to make a motion for first reading? I don't think we did that yet, did we? I don't think we did. I'll make it then. I move that bylaw 1083-25, land use bylaw, amending bylaw, education use, be given first reading. Discussion on the motion, members of council. Councillor Telebus, any discussion on first reading motion?
Nothing further than what I just shared.
Good, thank you very much, appreciate that. Seeing no further questions, would you please initiate the voting process on first reading? Councilor Telebas, how do you vote on first reading?
In favor.
Thank you. That carries unanimously, 5-0 in favor of first reading of the bylaw. All right. Next on our agenda is our councilor inquiries this evening, or responses or reports. I'm not aware of any. Seeing none, thank you. We'll move on to the next item on our agenda is item 10.1, CU update, May 13th, 2025. We'll go over today. Hang on, Mike. Your mic's on, Mr. Schwartz.
Yes, thank you very much. Unfortunately, I didn't get the hard copy to LLNS, or the electronic copy, so we'll send that out tomorrow. So this will be a verbal with more details to follow. So June 2nd to 8th is Seniors Week, and it's about celebrating the many achievements and contributions of our seniors in the community. We have an event scheduled on June 5th at the Beaumont Community Center. Doors open 11:30, runs till 2:30. There'll be a land acknowledgement. Our mayor will be saying some words. We've got some songs and some for children from the daycare, lunch and refreshments. People are urged, more details are on our website. People are urged to RSVP by June 2nd. We currently have 66 people registered. Finance, the tax notices and utility bills went out ahead of any of the pending postal strike, so we dodged that bullet. They're still talking, but we have communication strategies are already in place. Legend Legal Services, we are very pleased to be the host municipality for the 2025-26 municipal internship program. It's an administrator stream, and we welcome Levi Zimmerman, who's in the room tonight. He was here as well last week. He's our new municipal intern. So this is an 18-month internship, and what we try and do is, and it's funded through a provincial grant, and it's co-hosted by Community Services and Legal Ledge Services. And what we try to do is give these emerging professionals as much exposure to the different areas of our business as possible. We've done this on numerous occasions, and LLNS has a very robust plan in place, and so Levi will get a chance to go into every major city department, and so far it's been a riot working with him. He's quite a talented individual. So the last thing I wanted to talk about was potholes. Remember the story I told you a while back about if you do a survey, and the data supports this, if you do a survey of your residents, the top three things, when you ask them that they're not happy about their community, the top three things are: 1, taxes are too high; 2, there's crooks in office; and 3, too many potholes. Our pothole season, we have a process and a service that we sweep our roads, we complete our potholes, we complete our line painting. We go out in the early spring, as soon as we can, and repair the worst potholes. We have our own hot mix machine. So we are 75% completed in our sweeping, and then we will start the final cleanup of the potholes, repairing of the potholes, so in about 2 weeks. The dilemma we face is the same 6 people that are doing the sweeping are the people who do the potholes. So we did look at ways of increasing service by maybe we do it weekly. Sweep 1 week, potholes the next week. The transition for those crews is highly inefficient. So we've chosen to look at the most efficient way to do things. We do receive sweeping complaints, and it just seems that this is the most effective way to do it. Now, that said, as part of our service review, we are going to look at different options so that we can provide increased service level, find out what those costs are, or can we be creative. So that was my update for the night, and if anybody has any questions, so pleased to take them.
Thank you, Shirley Schwartz. Any questions for our CEO? Councilor Telebas, any question? I can't see you.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. See no questions. Thank you, Schwartz. We appreciate that. Next on our agenda is item 11, notices of motion. Madam Clerk, any notices of motion this evening? Penrod, I believe you have a notice of motion. Please proceed. Oh, hang on. There you go.
Thank you. At the June 3rd, 2025 regular council meeting, I'll move that by the August 26th, 2026, is that the right date? No, so it's a November date, actually. I think, right?
Madam Clerk?
Sorry, Councillor Penrod, I had sent you a message, and
sorry.
that date was confirmed by planning.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Mayor, we were just going back and forth on the date that's most realistic from administration's perspective.
Okay. August 21st.
Thank you.
Still good?
Yeah, so August 26th it is.
Yeah.
Thank you for your help on that end, Ms. Dargis. So that by the August 26, 2025 regular council meeting, administration prepare a report outlining options and potential funding sources for the creation of a City of Beaumont Planning and Development Academy to provide interested parties, which may be residents, developers, builders, investors, or others, with an overview of key legislation, statutory plans, and policies that guide planning and development in Beaumont. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. Madam Clerk, just the one notice of motion this evening. Thank you. Okay, next on our agenda is closed session, which will be item 12.2, CAO priorities discussion. I will ask that we have a motion to move into camera, and when we come out of camera, there'll be no further business to attend. The motion's coming from it, so we'll attend the meeting in closed session. So with that, please have the motion to move into closed session, please, on the screen. I'll make it, and we'll proceed with our discussion. Thank you. I move that council move into closed session at 9:05 p.m. pursuant to the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, Section 17, 24, and 29. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, would you please initiate the voting process? Councilor Telebas, how do you vote?
In favor.
Thank you. That carries unanimously, Council, 5-0.